Hello and welcome everybody. Please take your seats. We're going to be starting in a minute. Hello and welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Abdurrahman Ayman. I was actually not meant to be your MC for the day, but on a short notice, here I am. I'm actually a founder of a company called Educately. Hopefully I get to tell you about that a little bit more in the intermissions in between, tell you the story of the company and how it links up to an extremely vibrant ecosystem that we're here to talk about today, which is the ecosystem of the African continent. Specifically here, from Cairo. I'm a proud Egyptian. This is my hometown. So I welcome you all, marhaba, and I hope you have a fantastic journey with us throughout the rest of the day. So let's get it started, and I'm gonna cut it short a little bit, and first of all, apologize for a little bit of the Egyptian timing. It's a bug. In Egypt, we look at time as a construct, and a construct that is fluid. It moves like fluid water. And you need to navigate it accordingly. And that's what a lot of Egyptians would tell you when you ask them about timing. They tell you, Egyptian timing up plus 30, plus 1 hour, sometimes even more. But I hope that does not impact your agendas for the rest of the day. For those of you who did not set up your clocks, Egyptian timing now is GMT plus 3, because we decided that 1 month ago, because it's fluid. So I'm gonna be your host for the day. I hope I'm a light-spirited guest of all of you. You are the superstars of the day. We're gonna be having some engaging panels throughout the day to talk about things like the state of the ecosystem on the continent, M&As, are we getting there? We're gonna talk about the ecosystem in Cairo, how vibrant it is. We're gonna be talking about femtech and its importance. And last but not least, we're also gonna be having some superstar entrepreneurs here on the stage that are pitching for Series A and Series B investments. So I hope you get to enjoy all of these different parts of the agenda. But before I get started with the day, let's do a little bit of a warm-up. And for that, I'm gonna need your phones. So if you have your phones, can you please bring out your phones? And I'm gonna use this as a metaphor for my entrepreneurial journey so far. I told you I'm gonna give you a little bit of stories here and there from my entrepreneurial experiences. So can you unlock your phones and just hold them up? Face towards me. Fantastic. I would love you to open your favorite messaging app. Think WhatsApp, Messenger, Instagram DMs, iMessage, whatever, your choice. Do you have it open? It's there, you're ready. Can you pass the phone to the person sitting beside you? Oh, you're uncomfortable doing that. Don't do it. I was just joking, You don't need to do that, But this is my first pun from my entrepreneurial journey so far. That's what we do as entrepreneurs when we go to pitch for investment, right? Especially when you're looking at early stage investments. You walk in on a VC or a bunch of investors or angels and you tell them, hello, my name is Abdurrahman. I'd like to have your money, please. They're like, for what? You're like, I want to build this. I want to build that. I remember our first pitch, we walked in on a bunch of angel investors and we told them, we want to become for education what LinkedIn is for jobs today. And they were like, what are you talking about? What does that even mean? But that requires a lot of trust for an investor to look at a bunch of entrepreneurs and just make that decision to invest. And also on the other side, it requires a lot of trust from a bunch of entrepreneurs to decide, I'm gonna take your money and you're gonna become my partner in whatever it is that I'm building. Just like that small trust exercise that we did over there. Because you become an open book for each other. For me, that exercise you just did is the exact same feeling I have whenever we share a data room with investors. It's the exact same feeling. You become an open book. You're opening to them one of the most intimate parts of your business. And for me, that is a fundamental part of ecosystem building. It depends a lot on trust. And AfricArena, over the past 5 years, going on 5 years, has managed to do that. Try to build those networks and connections of trust, because that is the foundation of any flourishing and vibrant ecosystem. But I cannot talk that much about AfricArena because I didn't build that business. For this next point in time, before I move on to that introduction, feel free to connect, if you would like, to the Wi-Fi using Intercon, and there's no password needed to do so. If you'd like to share about the event, and later on you're going to need it for a specific app. But the best person to talk about our event today, and the best person to talk about AfricArena and ecosystem building, is a person that has been necessarily through this experience firsthand. Not only on the ecosystem building side, but also being a founder initially himself. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome on stage founder of AfricArena and CEO, Mr. Christoph.
Thank you very much for this warm introduction, and welcome to all of you. It would be great to have the clicker, Mr. MC. Thank you so much. So, as you said, this is about fundraising. It's about enabling the tech ecosystem on the continent. I've been a founder myself, an investor, and I think it's, as you indicated in the opening speech that you made, it's a lot about trust, and trust relies on human connection. Human connection is essential to deal making. You don't do a deal without knowing the individual that you're investing in or partnering with them, receiving investment. So at AfricArena, we created the platform 7 years ago, actually, in 2017, when the market at that time was barely above $300 million. And our goal and our mission there was really to provide a platform to connect founders with opportunity, market access, working with corporate on open innovation program, and raising capital from angel, early stage fund managers, or later stage as their development goes on. So that's really what is at the core of our mission. So we're not an event. Events are just a platform for us to use and manage the communities of corporates, investors, and founders all across the continent. So we do this through three things. We obviously run events, as today. So we do quite a lot of them, nearly a dozen a year across the continent, but also internationally, to go and get more investors to co-invest and discover the opportunity of African tech. We run a number of services through open innovation challenges with corporates and various partners. Increasingly and surprisingly for me, these partners are VC firms. So we run a bunch of open innovation challenge with some VC firms across the continent, on deep tech, for example. And that's really interesting. And the third thing we have is products. So we have, over the years, learning from what it takes to connect founders, corporates, and investors, build some platform which are content distribution platform, and also a platform that enable the connection between founders. Ultimately, our KPI is the amount of capital that is being raised. So to date, AfricArena alumni, so AfricArena has enabled being a stage for founders to pitch and connect quite a lot of fundraising. So we are now at over $500 million. So that's directly traceable deals that happen as a result of connections made at AfricArena. We have granted now over $3 million of AWS credits. AWS is one of our key partners historically. We look at about 1,000 startups every year. We have about 250 that pitch at our various events, and the top 50 to 70 come to Cape Town at the end of the year to pitch at our Grand Summit. We've also run quite a lot of Open Innovation Challenge with many corporates. So that's the impact. Open innovation is really at the heart of what we do. So we currently have a dozen open innovation programs opened. These are open innovation programs that are endorsed by either DFIs, so we run a program, for example, with FMO, which last year was focusing on agri-tech, climate tech, deep tech with Savant. We also have sustainable construction with Saint-Gobain, and so on. These open innovation programs enable market validation by investors or corporates, and the deal flow that comes out of this program is really high quality, and that what attract other investors to look at this deal flow and invest in it. And just investors like, for example, Launch Africa Venture, which was the most active investor in the last 2 years, has extensively used this platform to make their investment, about half of them. So we're really proud of that. For the corporate, the value is market intelligence, sourcing, and also co-constructing a future with startups. So our programs run through a funnel where we have startups applying to those open innovation challenges, and then they're going through the process of being selected and attending our events. This happens across the continent, so we're now halfway through the circuit. We ran our first event in Johannesburg. The focus there was around enterprise, deep tech, and climate tech. That was about a month ago, and we now have this event, which is an event we do in partnership with AfricArena. So this is focusing on more growth stage startups. So we will today have mostly Series A and Series B startups pitching. And then we have our next event taking place in Dakar at the end of this month with a focus on logistics, mobility, and of course, fintech. We will then proceed with the events in Tunisia with a big focus on artificial intelligence. The Tunisia Summit will be largely focused on AI applied to various sectors. And then we'll have Kenya in end of October, focus on smart cities, health tech, and agri-tech. And then our final event of the year, Grand Summit, just before Super Return in early December. Each of these events comprise an investor unconference, so that's where we manage investment community, creating the future of VC or co-creating the future of VC, and it's investor only, corporate, GPs, LPs, and this is an exciting process through which we ensure that VC get to know each other, discuss the problem that they're facing, and try to build solution together. It's outcome driven. We also run Founders Bootcamp, kind of the same thing, but equipping them also with some elements to engage with investors and corporates. And then we have the summit, which is really discussion and pitching of startups. So Founders Bootcamp is an exciting element. So it's usually on a 2-day program, and we have that at each of the summits. We also do learning expeditions. So for those who are interested in the Cairo tech ecosystem, tomorrow we run a 1-day learning expedition tour that's going to enable you throughout the day to discover local investors, such as Algebra Ventures, visit some accelerators and startups from the local scene, and get to know some more stakeholders in the ecosystem. And the Investor VC Unconference we had this weekend in Fayoum, which is about 3 hours south of Cairo, was really an exciting moment. So we had about 25 VCs from about 12 different countries and different types of investors, corporate, GPs, and LPs, discussing on a various number of topics. And the outcome of this conference was that, we're going to work on certain topics to advance the quality of governance from the foundation of the creation of startups to working better between corporates and general partners to build road to potential exits, but also maybe have corporates becoming LPs in some of the fund and so forth. So this was an exciting time, and we will be communicating soon about some of the outcomes of this event. What you're going to see today, we have the audience in the room, but we also have a massive audience online. So all these events are obviously recorded, streamed live, and available for replay. Usually events such as this one get an audience between 1,000, 2,500 people online and replay. So the content is widely distributed across the continent and beyond, and it's a way for us to advocate the opportunity of investing in African tech. Also, on the mobile application that you see here, AfricArena Wired, you can watch again the pitch of every startup, every keynote, every panel discussion. So it's a wealth of content, insights that you can access digitally, at your fingertips. So we are soon, given the demand we have on this platform, because we have about 600 people using it now, releasing a desktop version of it, which is going to enable stakeholders and primarily investors to access the open source work done by Digital Collective Africa, which is what comes out of these VC unconferences, access some ecosystem resources, and also through the investor portal, look at startup profile and startup pitch. So every video of a startup pitching is available on this platform. So you can, if you haven't seen the entrepreneurs, or if you want to watch it again, or if you want to contact them, because their contact details are there, just one click to WhatsApp the founder of the startup, all accessible either on the mobile apps or desktop. So that's it in terms of what is AfricArena. You want more information, you can use these contact details. I hope you have a great session today, lots of networking and learning a lot from our distinguished guest and speaker. I'm very pleased by the quality of the content we have today and excited about the next keynote. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Now you kept the microphone this time. Very, very cool. Thank you so much, Christoph. Appreciate it. I think it gives us, that was a very nice setup for us to get warmed up for the day. Before we get into the upcoming keynote speech, which is gonna set up the upcoming part of the day, which is basically a keynote followed on directly by a panel, let's do a little bit of trivia. Yeah, we're all here, like most of the people here in the room, the faces I see are either investors, maybe a couple of entrepreneurs here and there, but let's do a little bit of trivia Africa Invest, let's say. How many investors, individual unique investors, do you think invested in startups across Africa in 2022? You got the answer. That was very fast. More than 1,100 unique investors threw in money into different ventures across the African continent. How much money did that account to? You should not say. How much money did that amount to in terms of investments in tech startups across Africa in the past year? Any guesses? 50 billion? 50 million? Oh, a little bit more than that. 6.5 billion US dollars of investments across the continent in the past year, financial year 2022. From my perspective, when we look and compare that to other maybe more advanced or later stage ecosystems, we can consider that as ground one, basically. Where the past couple of years, the African continent has seen a lot of different flourishing players rise, new different type of cash, capital, hot money being injected into the ecosystem, but I view this as ground one for this ecosystem when it starts growing. In the meanwhile, while that is happening, we still saw a lot of different M&As happening across the region. We still saw a lot of different exits happening across the region. And it begs to the question, or begs to ask the question of, do we feel that at this moment in time, the African ecosystem is maturing enough for us to see more of such movements that are happening at latter stages, more than early stage, Series A, Series B, but further up the funnel to give confidence to investors to see that within this continent, we're capable of producing tech startups that not only build, but they build to last, and they build to create value to their shareholders through exits. Being an early stage founder myself, I'm not the best person to talk about that. But the next person that I'm going to invite to the stage has all the skill set, knowledge that is needed to be able to tackle such a topic. So please help me welcome on the stage, for the next keynote, partner at Tilcom Capital, Irosum. You can do better than that.
Hi everyone, let me figure out the clicker. Yes, so thanks and a pleasure to be here, and thanks Christoph. I owe you one for a long time, so very happy to be here. What I would like to speak about in the next 15-ish minutes and then leave a few minutes for Q&A is where are we on our exits and M&A journey. For those of us raising capital, whether as companies and for sure as GPs, this is a question we come across fairly often. by our investors, by people who invest in funds first and foremost. And if we're unable to answer it well in the next couple of years, we may have difficulties to keep raising. So rather than giving the usual answer, trust us, they will come, I try to look at a little bit of data and see if we can gather any thoughts or any conclusions from what we are seeing here vis-a-vis other ecosystems and try and infer where we may be. Just as a quick background, I'm a partner at TLCom for the last 12 years. We're one of the first VCs in the neighborhood, I guess, at this point. We're currently in our second fund, which is a $150 million vehicle. We invest mostly in seed and A. We do like to see more exits, of course, as all other fund managers. We're focused on Nigeria, Kenya. Recently did our first deal in Egypt and currently doing our first one in South Africa, so sort of Pan-African, sitting outside of Nigeria and Kenya. So why is this important? What's an exit funnel is something I want to walk you through in 2 minutes. Some lessons from other ecosystems as mentioned. Where are we in our journey in Africa and what does it entail? What ingredients are missing in our ecosystem? And that's a personal view. This is not a science-driven, research-driven conclusion, but sort of what I infer from what I see. What can we do and what should we do as an ecosystem, in my view, about it as LPs, as GPs, as founders? A word about M&A, which is a very hot topic in the last year for an array of reasons, and where can we go from here? So why is this important? We're all running the generation 1 of the ecosystem. I know that it sounds weird to some of you that believe that so much has happened, but with all that happened, we're still extremely early in the journey, and there is still a lot ahead of us. So if we want to be able to show that we can return money, the next generation is going to really, really struggle with fundraising. We're being benchmarked globally. So whenever I speak to LPs, and I'm sure it's the same here for a lot of my friends, GPs in the room, the first question is, how do you benchmark against other ecosystems? Yes, there are some DFIs, and that's very, very lucky for us and very useful for us that are committed to invest in the ecosystem because it's Africa and because they're, the impact it creates. But there's also an element of global capital that will stop coming, or already stopped coming, because they're having a hard time to benchmark us versus Chinese funds, US funds, Indian funds, Israeli funds, and so on and so forth. And this is where we should be aiming as a community. So we also touch on the new GPs and their struggle and why we need to make it work for them. So what is an exit funnel? This is CB Insights data. You can Google it and find it. It's fairly easy to find online, which looked on 3 years of seed raisings, 08, 09, 2010, and followed all the seed rounds through the life cycle of the companies for 10 years. This is the data from 2018, sorry. And what you can see here, and I'll save you the small fonts, is basically that out of, say, 1,100 companies that raised seed, this is US data, about 30% exited, and exited is a big word. This is all forms of exit, including buying them at, taking the shares for free at the end. So that is those that didn't die, which means 70% did not make it, but 30% exited. About 10% exited at north of 50 million, right? So when we think about exits, we always think about Facebook and Google and Instagram and whatnot, but actually the average exit size of companies is in the low tens rather than in the high hundreds or billions. And this is something to keep in mind when you're raising a large fund, and we are raising 150, so that means that to 3 exit, we need to return 450. That's a lot of capital to return. And it's hard to do with an array of 20 million exits. So that's the math of how it looks in reality. 1% became unicorns, so worth north of $1 billion. And there are, of course, some very, very big wins in that pack, including Stripe and Docker and others. They're extremely meaningful, right? They're in the tens of billions in value. but the majority of the exits are sitting in and around the tens of millions mark. So what can be 15 to 2017, which means they will probably be exiting somewhere by 2027, so between now and 27. These are the numbers we're looking at. We should anticipate roughly 40 exits, of them 13 to 14 over 50 million, with a couple of unicorns. Now, the good news is that we're already sort of there, especially with the unicorns. With the 50 million exits, we're halfway there, but I can see a path there. So if you count the actual companies sold for cash north of 50 million, we have a few of these in the last few years, probably closer to 10 than to 15, but not too far. And this is how the picture looks if you roll it forward. So if you look at the cohort of 18 to 20, these are the numbers. We should be looking at 4 or 5 unicorns more, already 40 to 50 million exits or more. And of course, it looks much better in 32. So this is just saying if we believe the US model will work here, this is where numbers take us. What is different between here and the US, and not just here in the US, also I've looked at quite a lot of India data. The ratio of numbers, of companies that had raised Series B vis-a-vis those who raised seed and A is significantly lower in Africa. There are lots of reasons for that. They're younger, but also there's less money, especially there's less local money. And what I guess a lot of us learned over the last 2 years is that international money is very happy when money is cheap and there's no interest, and the minute interest goes up and money is not free, international money tends to go away, which is what happened in the last 9 months. So I have not seen almost any B price round or C price round since 9 months in Africa. And the reason is a lot of the international guys are not here, and there are very, very few local funds who can lead those rounds. So we're sitting with about 50% of the Indian ratio of B to A, and probably lower if you compare to US data. And I think this is something we should be very aware of. This is something that we as an ecosystem need to think about. If we compare to India, to the India data, it is worth noting that the numbers are not extremely different from US. So this, again, trying to analyze what happened to the cohort of 2012 to 2015, to 2014, how many exits north of 50 million happened, how many unicorns, and so on. The total number of companies valued north of 50 million is roughly similar to the US. So you can infer that maybe the math works. But if you look at Africa vis-a-vis India in those years, it looks like we're earlier than what we think, or where we think we are. We're actually pretty similar to where India was roughly a decade ago. And that can tell us a few things. We're potentially looking at a couple of years with less capital coming in, because the world will be looking and waiting for our exits, as it did for India a decade ago. But also the good news is if we will behave similarly, a lot of this will come in the next 5 to 6 years. What drove India's surge, and I think here comes an interesting part, a lot of the exits in India are actually M&As between Indian companies. So if you look at the top 10 or 15 exits in India in 2021, on the M&A side, majority of them is Indian M&A. I think roughly 90%. In Latin America, it's around 80%. It's something we have not started seeing in Africa yet, but building large platforms locally means that the people buying understand the value proposition and the value the business models of the acquired companies way better than an American buyer. Okay, we have seen Amazon buying, we have seen Walmart buying, of course, but majority of global buyers usually buy technology rather than market access in those markets. And when Amazon did buy and Walmart did buy in India market access, but Google and Facebook don't tend to do it. And those who are buying local market share are usually local buyers. Another interesting piece about India is majority of IPOs are in the or in the local market for fairly similar reasons. Buyers in public markets understand better the business model in their home market. The US public markets don't understand the business models of Indian company that well, and hence most of the Indian companies you see go public in the US sell in the US in dollars. Majority of those who sell in India in rupees go public in India. So this is what I've just mentioned. You know, you can go and look it up yourselves, but the data is not invented. Majority of IPOs, 10 out of 11 in 21 happened in India, 1 in the US, and same for the acquisition. You know, this is the amount of acquired companies by Indian companies in India that same year. We have a public markets issue. India's public market is $3 trillion. Nigeria's $65 billion. So this is a very, very different nature of public market. South Africa is somewhere in between. Not a great appetite there for non-South African companies at this point in time. There are lots of projects ongoing between London Stock Exchange and some of the African stock exchanges, including Nigeria and JSE for dual listings. But I think that what we should remember is, as much as we aspire for US listings, a $3 to $10 billion company valuation in the US on NASDAQ or NYSE will hardly get any coverage. These are tiny companies in US terms, and there are very few analysts who will look at them. Whereas they can definitely not go public in Nigeria because there is not enough depth there. So we need markets that are in the mid-trillions, in the single-digit trillions, to get enough coverage and traction. And this is something to think about, makes some of the European exchanges actually pretty interesting to explore for listings for African companies. We have not seen many of those, but it's a point to keep in mind. Looking ahead, you know, I think we definitely will see more maturing companies hitting values, not valuations. These are very different things. I'm guessing some of us are learning it the hard way this year. So we will see more companies acquired, in my view, at the north of 100 million in the next couple of years. Many of the deals, I think that the number of deals will probably plateau for a couple of years. I don't think we will get to 10 billion in money raised this year, probably not the next as well. We have a drying up GP ecosystem. We're missing a lot of the global capital, so I'm slightly less optimistic than some. I don't think it's a bad thing, by the way. I think it's a healthy stage of maturing. And we probably need a couple of more years to be able to say if we are tracking as US as India, but I think we should have a good idea of which KPIs to look at. What can we do quickly? We are working closely on an exit framework with our companies. It is something that I can only advise and suggest other GPs to do. I think this is a great part of our responsibility and role as investors. It's not just to give money, but also to try and make sense of how you exit from very early. Doesn't mean that every founder needs a date on day one of when they exit, but it does mean that there needs to be some form of a discussion and an understanding of the elements required and a check-in on both of those every couple of months. Say, at least once or twice a year with the CEOs to make sure that there is enough alignment between the board and the leadership of the company and the investors about how this looks. M&A, very, very quickly. We are in a year where I believe we will see more M&A. We have seen in our portfolio a few companies who went fairly aggressive the M&A route, the likes of AutoCheck and others, and Fair Money recently as well. We have seen many trying to do so. I think that this is a period where valuations are lower, where people are struggling with capital raising, so the players that have more capital, higher valuations are in a better position to acquire. What I have seen many times is many of those discussions die very quickly on valuation because people have this billion-dollar exit dream, which is great to have, but just to be realistic, most exits do not get there. And I think, sometimes you also need to be a bit more realistic and not just pride-driven when you enter those discussions as founders, as shareholders of the acquired company, not just the acquirer. and some of these will actually create more value to both sides, not just to the acquiring one. So I do believe the upside is there. I also believe we are fairly early. I think we're looking at 5 to 7 years until we start seeing a systematic flow of exits north of 50 million, north of 100 million. But we should be seeing signs of that from, starting sort of 2 years from now. I would try, and I hope we do it as an ecosystem, track some of those KPIs to make sure that we are where we think we are. I think we should work very hard on growing the capital stack locally, especially in B and C, to be able to have local leads for these rounds. With local companies. We should be trying to promote more aggressively local M&A, platformizing, building large Africa platforms, and we should also try and establish relationships with some of the relevant stock exchanges, not just with the Nasdaq and NYSE, to be able to list in places that are relevant from a size perspective and a business model understanding perspective in the near future. So that's it. Thank you very much.
You can stay here. We're still going to need you. So for this next section, while I introduce the panel, yes, no. There will be a panel first, then Q&A. Can I have the clicker for a second? Because this is a very big question about exits, maturity of the ecosystem, etc. We cannot only answer it by ourselves, and even the great Aido-san needs a little bit of help. So we're going to invite our panelists to the stage for the upcoming panel, which is going to be about the same topic, which is necessarily exits and the maturity of the ecosystem in the African region. So please help me welcome the speakers to the stage. You're welcome to join us right now. Mr. Muhammad Aladdin from Global Ventures, Aya Zarmin from Briga, Noha Andil from Managing Director and FinTech Portfolio Lead, Endeavor Egypt, Natalie Colby, Managing Partner from Norskin, and this panel will be moderated by Aido-san, partner at TLCom. Please help me welcome the panelists to the stage.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. And I'm open at the Q&A part of this discussion, of course, to also questions about the presentation. We'll hang around later as well. Thanks very much for joining, and very exciting to have this chat with all of you. I think what I would like us to try and do today is, rather than discussing very high level where are we in our journey and so on, is being more specific with areas, with companies, with sectors in which we think exits are closer. What are the main issues you're seeing on both exits and M&A, and so on and so forth. If we can just do a quick round of introductions, it will be great. So if we can start with you briefly.
Okay. All right. I think it's working. Hi, everyone. My name is Aya. I am Moroccan by origin. I work currently at Briga, which is a European fund that now we're trying to see Africa actually moving forward. I previously worked in VC, in VC and mix between VC and private equity. I was also an ex-entrepreneur before joining VC, and I'm excited to have this panel with you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Noha. I'm a manager and FinTech Portfolio Lead at Endeavor Egypt. For those of you who don't know what Endeavor is, it's a global organization that basically supports high-impact entrepreneurs, helping them scale and grow and kind of reach that, 10x growth trajectory. And we also have an Endeavor Catalyst Fund, which we invest in our 42 markets that we operate in. We currently have, our Fund 4 is around $500 million, and we've had over 280 investments over the 37 markets that 37 out of the 42 markets that we operate in.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Mohammed Ali Aidin, I'm a principal at Global Ventures. Mia, a Series A and Series B investor.
Hi everyone, I'm Natalie Colby. I'm the managing partner of Morsecom 22, which is a venture capital fund focused on Africa, raising $200 million for Series A, B, and C.
Okay, great. So thanks for that. And starting with a very simple and easy question, in which sector do you think we should start seeing the first material exits? And by material, let's refer to $50 or $100 million in actual threshold. And what type of exits do you think these will be? And if you can touch on why, will be interesting. I don't know, Aya, if you want to kick us off.
Yes, sure. So in Africa, I'm actually still bullish on few sectors. The first one is obviously fintech. I know that most of the exits already have been in fintech, recorded, around last year and even early these years, early these months of 2023. I think that the fintech market is still untapped. A lot of startups starting to really get into multiple verticals, peer-to-peer payments, remittances, lending, etc. So there are multiple verticals that startups have tried, have started to tackle. But I really still believe that it's still untapped. A lot of countries are still facing the same issue. And I do see some good pipeline actually, for the seed stage that I hope at some point they would reach that level. If we're speaking $100 million plus, I'm quite bullish on that. And regarding what type of exit would I say, I choose to roll out the IPO, for Africa for reasons that we might discuss a little bit later. But I do believe, in the M&A, in the M&A sector specifically from corporates. As you mentioned, corporates here in Africa, specifically the foreign ones might not acquire for getting the market, but more for the technology that the startup would actually build. So I'm bullish into these technology companies are building, some high tech for the African ecosystem in fintech. Another sector that we might discuss later is insurtech. I believe that the insurance penetration is really low in Africa. It might be cultural, is something else to be discussed, but I do think that a company that would crack that business model of insurance would definitely get, some high momentum and some good exits going forward. Needless to say, some climate tech, because we just have a good pipeline of good, of funds for Series B, etc., and DFIs looking at climate tech. So private equity might really be interested because it has good governmental support. But these are the three sectors that I believe would be at the top, with others, of course, coming after.
Thanks. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, sure. So actually, like adding to what Aya just said, I think fintech definitely as a sector is very interesting. However, I personally don't believe that it would be the up-and-coming sector for potential exits. And the reason for this is when we look about the set of regulations that we have in place that would enable some sort of product innovation to have this kind of holistic platforms that potentially could offer products from multiple streams, we've scored pretty good advancement in terms of fintech on that front, but not enough yet to create these kind of holistic platforms that could be of a sizable exit potential or opportunities in the market over the coming period. Yeah, when we look at the e-commerce sector, I think, and what we have seen over the past particularly 3 years, have been a very interesting growth and potential both together in terms of how they address the market. We've jumped into the second wave of e-commerce. It's not anymore about like just going and placing an order as a consumer, but we've done B2B e-commerce and we started kind of expanding on the value chain of what is needed to be within the e-commerce platform, including fulfillment and other kind of models. So from a readiness perspective, I think e-commerce kind of positioned to be more ready than fintech, although that fintech has kind of more hype, much more traction, a lot of money flowing into those companies over the past period. When it comes to the kind of exit opportunities, I think we are 2 or 3 steps away, and you've mentioned that on your presentation from IPOs. I don't think even, maybe it's realistic to kind of look at the potential view of where we can land when it comes to IPO, but on the short term, it's not going to be an IPO for sure. It's going to be 2 waves. The first wave is going to be more on the consolidation side. We're seeing a lot of consolidation money, capital flowing in from the GCC. Also a lot of consolidation money circulating within the African ecosystem. I don't think it's going to be on the north of 50 million. It's probably going to be less. And then the second wave would be more coming from the M&A side. I believe that there is a huge role for private equities to be able to kind of play this role, yet we don't have the sizable funds in the region that would be able to do such sizable exits. And corporates looking for digitization and digital innovation and not missing on their market share and their current product offering would be kind of the core driver of exits over the coming period.
Okay, thanks for that. Now maybe to you with the next question, which is what can we do? You know, we've been with Actis for a couple of years before. That has been very active also in the later stages. Some forms of buyouts, at least investors buyout and so on. What can we do actively as an ecosystem, more so as investors, to prepare our companies for exit?
Yeah, I think it's a conversation we need to be having with the startups from day one. I mean, I don't think it's something that they need to obsess about, because obviously there's a business to run, but I think being very deliberate about and understanding who your potential buyer is going to be, and making sure that you don't crater your cap table in a way that can cause an issue for a potential buyer. And it's this point that I think is an interesting one around the role that strategics play in your cap table. And we've had a couple of conversations with startups where they've got a strategic, and it's often a very kind of helpful thing to have, because they do provide strategic advice and inputs, etc. And it often gives the entrepreneur kind of a boost of confidence to have a big and strategic that comes and invests in their business. But when you're looking to exit, they might end up being the only exit option for you, and obviously that then impacts on the valuation. So it's an interesting, I don't think there's any right or wrong answer in that, but that's something that we actually spend quite a lot of time with companies, is being very careful about how you put your cap table together, particularly when it's a strategic, because it can help and it can also hinder your exit options.
Okay, thanks. And now maybe moving to you with Endeavor's experience in working with founders, in fundraising, but also, I guess, a global network of which many exited successfully. What can we be doing? What are you doing? And as an organization, your experience is useful on that front.
Sure. So as an organization, we kind of want to take a step back and look at it from what support services we need to offer the entrepreneurs in order to help them scale, grow, and then eventually kind of exit. So there are kind of three main things we look at. First is obviously access to capital, and this is where the investors come in. With Egypt back in 2022, we had around 160 deals with a total funding of a bit north of $520 million. Nigeria being first with around 830, and Kenya being second with around $630 million. So definitely there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of investors, foreign investors, that are looking into Africa as a region to invest. And as investors, we need to help these startup companies, kind of help them grow using, again, like building on what Natalie said about being strategic with their cap table, and kind of building on that and helping them create milestones to reach that end goal. So that's for access to capital. Obviously, our global network, having 42 markets, we also help with access to market. So we are able to help them expand into the different markets that are strategic as well, to scale and multiply their impact. And definitely access to talent. So definitely we have a lot of experts, corporate leaders that basically help these companies through lessons learned, successful stories, failures that they can learn from and continuously kind of grow and scale as well.
Thanks. I've shared some of my views on what are the missing ingredients in the ecosystem, but very interested from, there's a lot of experience on stage. So from your experience, what should, other than, saying give us more time, which is always a nice ask, what else should we be actively doing, pushing as an ecosystem? Where are the gaps in your view to see a more active exit ecosystem in the next 2-3 years rather than in the next decade?
Yeah, I think there was a gap. I think, and you said this in your opening presentation, in later stage local capital, and that's certainly an area that we're playing. And you often, there's not many funds that can support businesses in B and C rounds. I think there's quite a lot of activity, but when we get into B and C rounds, the local funds, there aren't that many. I think there is a gap there, and as you mentioned, the hot kind of money from outside has gone away for now. I think it will come back. And I think what we as an ecosystem need to do is really to be public and shouting out from the rooftops about what is happening on the African continent, because we are so small when it comes to, less than 1% of VC capital comes to this continent. So we do need to kind of get out there and put ourselves on a global stage so that when the capital does come back, and it will in a few years' time, that it does actually come back to Africa so that it can support the larger exits when they do happen in the kind of C and D rounds.
And any other, which I fully agree with, the later stage funders, but alongside that, anyone sees any other gap that is potentially addressable?
If I may just say something, so I've noticed also in Africa that we are quite open. Even the global capital that comes to us comes from two particular regions, either Europe, either the US, and we have been focused sometimes also as entrepreneurs or as VCs. Sorry, we've been focused on these two regions, even in our roadshows, even in going into the global stages. I think there's a lot of capital to be unlocked also around other regions such as Asia, the Middle East. Also, they started coming. Latin America also, I've seen few fund of funds also that are looking into Africa. So I do believe that we just need as an ecosystem, it's a 5 years work, like I'm sure when we go on stage they're not going to come directly, but it's a 5 years work for the next generation to come, and I do believe that we have to unlock impact capital, which is already there, it's already, they're already investing in us, but it's also the commercial capital, and kind of showcase as Africa can show some returns. It's a work to be done, obviously, but it's good to start doing the work from now.
Okay, thanks for this. When you're looking at your portfolio companies or the companies you work with and have worked with, any lessons or advice or insights on M&A in Africa?
So there's a lot of lessons, I would say, and over the past period we've seen, and probably it's the only thing that is still ongoing at the moment, which is the consolidation capital that I spoke about earlier. There is a lot of flow out of GCC into the region here, particularly in Egypt, and we've seen a lot of offers and term sheets being offered over the past period. And I think on the personal side, there was exactly what you referred to during your presentation, that there is some sort of the $1 billion company dream. And sometimes this would kind of swipe out any form of potential for this term sheet placed on the table to materialize into something meaningful. Because at some points, it might be much more stronger, much more meaningful to be part of a bigger gear or just consolidate and have a bigger gear to kind of deliver the impact that you're dreaming of as a founder. And with market conditions changing, it became clear for us that there was some sort of cloud affecting the vision of the founders in terms of where they should head with the company and with the business over the coming period, particularly with very basic challenges that they know about beforehand. So I think getting affected by the idea of mega success there is no mega success, there's success. There's no classifications of success, I would say. There's only success, but there's always kind of sub-classifications that founders will get to see about where they want to head with the companies overall, and that led to a lot of missed opportunities.
Thanks. I don't know if anyone wants to comment. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think the advice that we give on consolidation is going to happen. I think that's a given. So put your ego aside and don't wait too long, because there are some good companies there, you want to be consolidating with them. Others might do that if you're sitting back and not wanting to put your ego to one side, because obviously there can only be one CEO, right? And I think that's what stops a lot of these consolidations happening is maybe ego is a wrong word. I mean, you've built this business, it's your baby, and now you're going to have to give it up or share it with somebody. It's hard. It's a very hard mental step to take. But if you don't take it or you wait too long, the opportunity might have gone. So I think that's probably a big thing that we talk to our companies about. Just put your ego down and don't wait too long.
Just to add to that, I mean, what we've noticed as well is that when companies kind of earlier on have that plan of this exit strategy in maybe 5 years, whether it be M&A or IPO, their mindset throughout that process is more open. And that's where kind of the egos are a bit less versus ones that are thrown into getting kind of deals and going like, okay, you know, maybe this is a good opportunity, and then this is maybe where it rises like, oh, this is my baby, or, you know, I need kind of these terms instead of these terms, and not looking at the founders versus kind of what's best for the business. So that's kind of how we...
Thank you. Leading, in my view, to an interesting point, because a lot of these die at the valuation discussion, so when there is a disagreement on valuation, and this could be either from the founder's side or from the funder's side at times. So what is interesting to me, and I've learned that different funds do it very differently, how do you think of valuation at entry in detail rather than, you know, high level, we need to 10x? You know, how do you go about valuing a company in such a market that is, you know, what drives your valuation decisions? I don't know if Aya, you can start and.
Yeah, that's actually, you know, one of the toughest questions because we're going through that right now. So as a fund that is trying to tackle Africa, so in Europe we do anywhere between pre-seed and Series C. But in Africa, we're starting to build a pyramid from scratch just because we believe there's an ecosystem to build. So we're only doing pre-seed and seed. And let me tell you something, it's one of the hardest things that I have to go through right now because I can see that the valuations are going. I think the expectations of the founders have changed overall in terms of multiples. So we came with, you know, with a mindset, with like a set scorecard, and also with the, you know, with a set valuation methodology that sometimes, often actually, we have to adjust the premiums that we have to put. I can say that around Africa, we split the regions a little bit. Like we don't treat the startups in Egypt just like the startups in Nigeria or the startups in Kenya, etc. Starting with Egypt because where we are, I believe that Egypt is kind of like in this tricky position. It's between the Middle East and Africa. It has macroeconomics of Africa, but sometimes often raises in multiples of the Middle East. So it puts it in this position also with the access to, you know, with the GCC capital that is coming in. A lot of times the valuations that we have, even for pre-seed or seed, are a bit above what we're thinking. But to be honest, how we value, just to come back to your question, so first of all, we look at each region apart, we look at the economics of the region apart. We look at the potential of the company and we believe in the founder. So us as Briga, we're kind of an operator kind of type VC. So the founder for us is the one that we start with. If we are absolutely happy with how things are, we just embark upon the discussion. We have a certain multiple for every certain sector, and we know those multiples, and then we adjust the premiums depending on how the startup is and how is it working out. We were leaders, we like to lead around, so of course we check the ecosystem. We're not going to just drop a deal like that. But let me just say that it's one of the most objective things that we do, and we just like to have an open discussion with the founder, making sure he's not getting diluted, also making sure our fund economics are not going to be hammered.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, the way that we look at it is an exit-led view, always. So having a look at, you know, the valuations and multiples and everything going in is interesting. It's obviously we do triangulate that. But once you look at where the business is going and you apply a multiple to that, who's going to be the buyer that's going to be buying that at the end? And you might say, oh, well, that's pick a number, 7x revenue multiple. It makes sense. It's all good and well. But when you apply it to their forecast, it ends up being a $2 billion business. And you say, well, who is going to come onto the continent and put $2 billion into this business? And I think that's often where we have to kind of recalibrate. So we always look at the exit, who's the potential buyer, what can they pay, and then we discount that back to say, well, then does this valuation make sense? It's mainly the way that we do it as one of the kind of triangulation methods.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to add just a quick thing. Definitely this is one of the things that we consider as well in terms of calibrating the valuation. And I think deciding on the valuation early on, 10x is just this easy high level number, but how to get there is really important for us. And that's kind of the calculations that we make sure that we do before entering and deciding on whether this is kind of an inflated valuation or up to bar. So I think valuations are function of market. So how big is your market is a very important aspect, but it's more importantly, how much you can capture and what does it take you to get there. So if I'm coming in $20 million at $100 million post-money valuation, to achieve my 10x, I need to be at a $1 billion. if your market share to get to the 1 billion valuation is going to be 20 or 30% of the market, this is unrealistic. This is not going to happen. So then for me, this is an extremely inflated valuation without even diving into further details. So 100%, I think we also put comparables to market share opportunity across different market players and what does it take them to get there to be able to kind of calibrate for the right entry valuation.
Thank you very much. Just been, trying to move us to the Q&A part in a couple of minutes, but any lessons maybe from IPOs that you were involved with in other markets about how can we help African founders think through IPOs, which markets, what should they be start doing, even if an IPO is 3, 4, 5 years away, if everything works, now to make it more realistic?
Yeah, so we've done a few IPOs on the continent, mainly in South Africa and Egypt. And actually, a lot of the investors in the Egyptian IPOs are South African fund managers. So there's quite a lot of pension fund money that comes out of the South African market. Unfortunately, the South Africans don't pay a lot. So if you're looking to IPO in South Africa, the asset managers there really do drag the valuations down. And the only way that we would ever contemplate listing there was if we knew we would get lots of international interest in that, because then they'd pull the South African asset managers up. And then you need a relatively big business, with a kind of $200 to $300 million float, to be able to attract the international investors. So I still think that Africa IPOs, unless it's in those two markets, South Africa and Egypt, with international interest, you're probably then looking to somewhere else, whether it's London or one of the European exchanges.
Any other comments around that before my last question?
Perhaps it's safe to mention, because I've spent some time in Saudi Arabia actually last year, and one of the things that I focused on is I had a few discussions with Tadawul, for example, that it's a pretty liquid market, it's the most liquid market around the Middle East. And I was quite stunned by how organized the market is. It's quite structured. That they have a parallel market, and also they have the main market. It's quite liquid, and I was happy to know that Saudi, even if is looking to onboard few companies from the world to actually list there. So it might be a potential market soon, depending on how the capital markets there. Of course, they are now in testing phases, but I've heard, that few people are trying to get some companies that they're like in that stage. So I think if that market is open, perhaps there's also the Abu Dhabi, stock exchange that I don't think it's going to open up soon, but there is a potential for there. Other than that, we did have one IPO that I would say, from Egypt that went, to the US, but sometimes it doesn't go very well for multiple reasons. So I do think that the best way really for even founders to think about exit is really just build it for another corporate to get acquired.
Thanks. My last question before we open it up is from each of you maybe one piece of advice for founders that are early now, say in their seed or A, to how to incorporate an exit thinking into their, if they should, into their journeys. Okay, so we can go from here. So if I may start, I would start building the relationship early. Just check in all the companies that got successfully acquired, because there were a lot of M&As, just to put the difference. There were a lot of M&As that are equity swaps. I'm speaking here about successfully acquired with a good amount of cash. What I saw is that they were really building the relationship really early with the potential company that would acquire them. It's a 3-year, 4-year relationship. They knew they understood the corporates, they understood what they needed, and they kind of built their business model and their target towards that. So I would say just build a relationship early with these corporates and know what really they want, understand them.
Definitely, I agree with that. Also, scanning the different markets that you would want, to have that exit strategy. Building on what Aya said about Saudi. I mean, Tadawul is growing 20% annually. It's reaching $3 trillion. So definitely, it's kind of the MENA market, IPO go-to market for exit. And a lot of the companies in Egypt, specifically the startups, they're looking at Saudi as kind of the exit market to kind of exit for in the future. So definitely kind of scanning again the different markets and seeing what would work.
Mohammed, any advice from you?
I would say focus on the three letters OJO, which is operational, governance, and organizational structure from day one. That is, it acts as some sort of a block ahead of following some sort of a successful exit at one point, and it creates a lot of issue. And usually, it's the kind of training aspect for potential buyers, particularly on the governance side. So let's make sure that from day one we have the proper governance in place, and make sure that you are building something to exit. And please put your ego aside, as you just said. I'm just going to steal this from you, so put your ego aside, please.
Yeah, I mean, I would say governance. I mean, I know it's a really boring topic and everybody goes, oh, really? Okay, Natalie, can you not say something more exciting than that? But, you know, everything about looking at different markets, etc., will give you the difference between a 5x and a 10x. But governance will take you down to 0. And that, I think as an ecosystem, we can all be doing a lot better than that. You know, when things like that issue that happened, and it's obviously, I'm picking on it, but the one that came out with Flutterwave, and there've been a bunch that happened after that, immediately the international capital just goes, ugh, Africa, you know, why would we want to go and take that risk there? So we have to we have to outperform on governance in Africa, because investors will not invest. It doesn't matter how beautiful the business is, what the market opportunity is, how fantastic the founder is, if they've got a little itch when it comes to governance. So we have to, unfortunately, we have to go beyond the global best practice when it comes to governance, and then to be able to wipe out any noise around that, you know, for the future of the ecosystem, to be frank.
Thank you very much for all of you for the panel, and kindly join me in thanking the panelists. So thank you. And I think we have a few minutes for Q&A. So please go ahead.
I can just use my
You
voice.
could just use your voice.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Omar from Nova Scientific. My question is related to the points you guys raised, and you have eminent experience on that. So you mentioned that on the late stage, there are few VCs in the continent, and the main players are PEs, private equities. Now, private equities actually do not speak the language of top line. They speak the language of EBITDA multiples, which even make the discussion on valuation harder. So my question to you is, okay, just in time. So my question to you is, what is your advice for your portfolio companies on when they should start valuing themselves as multiples of EBITDA compared to multiples of top line? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. I can give it a quick try. First, you need an EBITDA to have an EBITDA multiple, which I guess majority of companies don't have until fairly late stage these days, so that's an issue. I would say that what I'm seeing, and I would like to see more of, or less of, depends how you look at it, is a lot of the private equities trying to raise early stage funds rather than growth stage funds, which is a very interesting choice, I guess. And I'm not too sure, well, I have my thoughts about why they're doing it. I'm not too sure it's a smart thing to do. In other ecosystems, actually a lot of private equities went with investing route, especially in India. A lot of the later stage capital came from local private equities and global private equities. I think that you will find there are international growth funds that are more open to talk revenues than EBITDA. I don't have a great advice unless you have a very, if you have a positive aggressive EBITDA at your B stage, fantastic, but it's a hard thing to get to. So I don't think there's a lot of smart or wise advice there as to how to go about it, other than finding people that are a bit more growth mentality. There are some such teams being built in some of the larger private equities in the continent, but it's early days. I don't know if anyone has any other comment.
It's a really good question and a really hard one to answer, to be honest. I don't think there's a right answer. I think you've got to get that balance right between growth and profitability, and find out where you are on your curve. I don't actually think there's a silver bullet answer to that question. It's a great question, but it's something that I think gets debated in every boardroom of every startup on the continent. Is exactly when do you tap off on the growth and push down on the profitability. So the right answer is the right answer for your business, and I know that's a super unhelpful answer.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
To expand on, Vivek Mittal from Afida Africa. We're an infrastructure platform. But to expand on your theme of, most of the exits in India were to Indian corporates or funds. What is the landscape in Africa, and do you expect that to change? Would it help to have a local deep market for exits on the continent rather than outside the continent?
My expectation is more of a hope than an expectation that we will see more strategic roll-ups, M&A oriented large players in Africa. So some of the quote-unquote unicorns that are sitting on larger balance sheets at this point, because they have raised or will raise over the next few years, hundreds of millions of dollars, will use it to build larger African platforms, which I've started seeing, but I'm still not seeing a lot of. I think there are a few great examples out there, like NFS Africa, which has been doing this strategically for a few years. Overcheck is doing it strategically. A few others, but still not at the numbers we should be seeing. So it was more of a comment about hoping to see more of those. I think we will need those to get to the right size to also address public markets that are international. But I just think it should be happening. We touched on some of the issues of why it's not yet happening. And again, if anyone else wants to comment, you're extremely welcome. If not, I know there are more questions.
Yeah, this is a great panel. Really appreciate you guys doing this. It's a super important, issue for the ecosystem, certainly right now. So, I guess I wanted to go back to something you said during your opening remarks, which was looking at the different IPO options. Now I know, maybe that's not going to be the biggest channel going forward for exits, but you mentioned kind of teasingly that you had some thoughts on solving this problem of, African IPOs likely being too small for the international markets, but the local markets not being liquid enough. And I just wondered if you wanted to expound on that, and if there are IPO market models that are out there, maybe smaller ones in Europe or somewhere else that would be interesting.
So, I still hope and believe, and we have in the portfolio a couple of those that we think potentially could be big enough or relevant for a US listing, which, if it goes successful, have on average high multiples and lots of depth in market and so on. But I do think that also some of the European markets, I think London especially is making an effort now to create mechanics of dual listings with NGX, with JSC, and others, is a very interesting thing to explore. We are lacking familiarity on both sides of what it takes, so I don't think we as an ecosystem know the London buyers, for instance, or advisors, and the actual processes and so on. Not that we're extremely familiar with the US, but if we're investing time, again, as investors, as founders, as ecosystem, or building bridges, I would also include building bridges to some of the European exchanges, because I think they may have more relevance, while they may be less intuitive as a first choice, they may be much more relevant from a size perspective, from an interest perspective, and some actually offer pretty good multiples and interest in technology in the last years.
Just add, just a quick one. I think that around Africa, there's a lot of studying to do in the different markets. I think that we need to really just take the US markets and also take, the Middle Easterns, and take the European markets and study them very well, knowing the asset management firms that invest in them, knowing how many emerging capitals are actually going there, because it's quite important in the end. When a company from Africa lists there, it's an emerging, it's a company in an emerging market, so we need to know the amount of capital within the stock market that can actually be allocated to that. It's fairly early stage. Like at Briga, we're currently doing that study, trying to understand them a little bit more. So I think that would be helpful if all of us as a VC community would do that.
Any more questions?
Good morning. Hi, Oyen, Managing Director of Techstars in Lagos. Thank you so much for all of your inputs. It's interesting. I'm so sorry, I don't know your name in the white shirt. But you mentioned governance being important, and we were actually debating this a few days ago. I'd love to know if you have a perspective for early stage startups who are likely to not have a board of directors, how they can incorporate good governance to ensure that it's not an issue later on.
To have a board of directors. But don't tell them, it's unpopular.
Yeah, I mean, I think just getting, it's hard to do, right? So because, I mean, you're running at 10,000 kilometers this way, but just making sure that you're putting the proper governance in place as you go, and having somebody who's dedicated to doing that, you know, and it's often a CFO or a COO or, you know, something like that. So boring things like policies and procedures and things like most people are like, really, like, should I be doing this? It makes a difference when you're sitting down and having the conversation about how do we, a simple thing, and this, if Flutterwave had done this, it probably wouldn't have gone wrong. An ESOP, how do we value the ESOP? What are the rules around people going into the ESOP? What are the rules about buying people out of the ESOP? Just a simple thing like that would have taken all of those issues away. It's not a conversation that you're having around, you know, a bar at 10 o'clock at night saying, oh, well, here's a few shares and here's the price. But that's the way, you know, we're operating. So I think having a practical advice is if you don't have a board or you don't want a board or an independent person who's just being that sounding board, have somebody in the company whose job it is to be governance and focused on governance and procedures, because then at least, and they're going to be the black hat, right? They're the person that you're going to fight with and irritate you the most, but you need to listen to them. So maybe just creating a kind of internal governance person, you know, as part of their role, I think would be an easier, cost-effective way to do it.
Thanks again, everyone. I think we just got the sign that we're out of time. So thank you again, and please thank everyone on the stage. And we'll be here after, I guess. So thanks.
Thank you so much to all our panelists. What a rich discussion that was, shedding a little bit of different light. So now that we've talked a little bit about like investments, we had some venture capital firms here on the stage. The upcoming section, from my perspective, at least, can we lower the music, please? Thank you. The upcoming section, from my perspective, is, as an entrepreneur, is the most exciting section of the day, where you get to see the people that are obsessing about solving problems. From my very humble perspective, that is what entrepreneurship is. Entrepreneurship is going out there, seeing a problem, and becoming super obsessed with solving that problem every single day of your life. So it's going to be my utmost pleasure and honor to welcome the upcoming people to the stage, which are going to be pitching for, they're currently at their Series A stage, and they're going to be pitching for investments to our jury, some superstar entrepreneurs from the ecosystem. But first of all, let me welcome the jury to the front, please. So can we have Aya back here? I think she might have went outside. So let's have Aya back. And let's have Rawad over here from Startup and Wiki System Lead at Mina for AWS. Yes, please. Thank you so much, Rawad. Okay, let's hope I don't butcher that. Can we have the Head of Venture Investor Relations at Mythos Group, Rupa Fidoza? Almost. Like what percentage? Okay, 75 is fine. That's okay. That's okay. That's my African DNA. And if we can have Aya also back here. Yes, I see you like Rania and you're having a conversation, which is awesome. Aya, can we have you here in the front? So thank you to our awesome jurors who are going to be evaluating our startups today pitching for Series A. But before we go to our Series A pitching, let's go back to a little bit of trivia. Like I told you, and I'm going to connect that to a little bit of storytelling. Who here, especially investor side, who here heard or used before the term the startup valley of death? Who used the term or heard the term? Can you elaborate more? What is the startup valley of death? Can we get a microphone over here? I want them all to hear you, because that's very relevant for the next part. Putting you on the spotlight there. That's what you VCs do with us entrepreneurs all the time. Here you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I believe it is the stage where the startup is at risk of failing,
Yes.
dying,
100%.
after they have been launched, after they have got at the beginning some support.
Beautiful.
So I think this is the value of this.
On point. Thank you very, very much. Can we give her a round of applause, please? I put her on the spot there. I put her on the spot. I'm prepared. She's not. So that's usually the term that's used to describe the stage in a funding format, which is between seed to Series A, that part over there, but also in a startup's life cycle. It's the stage where a startup has launched, has a product out there, is in the process of commercialization. They're kind of like figuring it out, and they're just starting to generate sustainable revenues. Once they have those revenues in place, they feel they have product market fit. Now we're ready to go fundraise our Series A. And usually they call that cusp the startup valley of death, because that's where most startups fail, post-funding. And it's very admiring, or I admire a lot, and I'm very inspired by the upcoming figures that are coming here on the stage, because they're gonna try to get through that valley of death. So best of luck to all our founders for the day today. Best of luck to myself also on our founding team, because we're not there yet, but someday we're gonna go there. But for now, we're in smooth sailing waters. So please help me welcome the first startup on the stage, which is a startup in the e-commerce section. So let's welcome on the stage the founder of SuperCommerce. And he can introduce himself and tell you a little bit more about the company. Before I let you start pitching, you thought you were going to do it orthodox, huh? Come on the stage and then just start pitching. I'm not going to let you do that. So first, what's your name, sir?
Sharif.
If you were to describe that company in one liner, what would it be?
Advanced e-commerce infrastructure.
So I'm going to leave you with advanced e-commerce infrastructure, and this is going to be kind of like a heads up for all the next founders. I'm going to put you on the stage. Thank you very much. You have 5 minutes starting now, sir.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Sharif Ismail, co-founder of... just 1 second. Where's the clicker? Hello, everyone. I'm Sharif Ismail, co-founder of SuperCommerce. And we help medium and larger enterprises in the Middle East and Africa unlock the full power of e-commerce. There is 12 million active e-commerce nowadays, but what technology are they using? Smaller businesses use local shop builders like Zed or Salla, but larger enterprises with more complex operations, they hire a developer. And surprisingly, hiring a developer is the most common method, and even smaller businesses outgrow shop builders and hire software houses as well. So in MENA, developers have a hard time making a custom e-commerce for their clients because there is no local technology and they have to use legacy software like Magento, which takes a long time to develop and change, and adding a new feature is extremely difficult. But not anymore. SuperCommerce provides advanced e-commerce infrastructure with over 300 APIs for developers to build their customers' e-commerce in no time. This is made possible using modular architecture, which breaks down the system into smaller independent units called modules. These modules can be updated and customized so businesses can keep up with their changing needs without having to completely overhaul their software. We help enterprises and software houses reduce their operations cost and increase their online sales by automating and supporting complex operations. And for that, top brands like P&G, Xiaomi, Al Jazeera Perfumes, and most of our customers have already migrated from other e-commerce softwares to SuperCommerce as an upgrade. We team up with system integrators like IT companies and software houses to implement and sell our software, which creates new revenue streams for them as well. Our business model for now is simple, 15K yearly plus a 1% revenue share. Working with enterprises, we were able to generate over 500K in revenues within 2 years with over 300K ARR. And our goal for this year after expanding to GCC is to reach 1 million ARR. We already launched in Saudi Arabia and we already secured the top enterprises, and we are so excited about the opportunities that lie ahead in this market. Helping developers build e-commerces in MENA is just a start, but our vision is to enable developers to build enterprise e-commerce using our low-code platform anywhere and anytime. We have a team with the greatest technical capabilities with more than 20 software engineers managed by 3 founders with over 10 years of experience in building and selling enterprise software. We already raised $550K last year, and now we are raising $2 million to expand our commercial team in GCC to acquire 200 customers and reach our goal of 3 million ARR by next year. Our first tranche of $500K is to be closed by July, and we already collected $400K with a 20% discount, and the second tranche is to be in November. If you are interested in investing in the next gen of e-commerce, let's talk. Thank you.
Let's hand it over to our jury.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for your presentation. So my question, I think, may be related to the discussion previously around exits and expansion. I think you've mentioned that you want to expand to GCC. Is there any particular reason why you've chosen that as opposed to sub-Saharan Africa, where also there's quite a large market potential?
Well, actually, so let me first welcome my co-founder and the CEO of SuperCommerce, Ahmed Maher. So, Ahmed, yeah, you can.
Thank you. So we started with GCC because out there it's much easier to expand because like e-commerce, it's similar to Egypt, and we already have a few customers before expanding to GCC from Saudi, from Emirates, and different countries. So it's much easier to get more customers from there, and we are planning to hire a commercial team in Saudi and then expand to South Africa, like as well with this ticket from round of funding.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks. This is really interesting. I have a question regarding a bit. If you can elaborate more on the distribution and go-to-market, because I think that's maybe one of your main differentiators. As you mentioned, like it's a competitive space. There's a lot of players. Would love to understand better, like how you're working with enterprises and how you're actually structuring those arrangements, and how does it compare to all the other e-commerce builders today available in the market?
Okay, so like most of the local player, they are going for Shopify model, like where like customer can create his shop in like 2 minutes, maximum 1 day, and he can set up everything for herself. But going to more complex e-commerce operation, especially even for startups like non-traditional e-commerce startup, B2B, like multi-vendor, quick commerce, social commerce, and also for medium and large enterprises, they hire a software house to build their e-commerce. And if you ask any software house right now what technology they are using to build this e-commerce, you will see it's like maybe it's Magento, WordPress, WooCommerce, OpenCart, one of these options. And all of this technology is like more than 10 years old technology. And they are suffering, and they are giving like minimum date to deliver this project for their customer, 6 months up to a year, and sometimes expanded to 2 years to be able to customize and deliver such a technology. So we wanted to help like developers. We are coming, me and Sharif, we co-founded a software house before SuperCommerce. So we know the suffer and the problem coming from like customer requirements and needs to be customized. So our go-to-market strategy is through system integrator and software houses, and we made this possible technically through modular architecture. So we didn't invent the modular architecture. Like there is a lot of players right now in US coming up with a composable e-commerce, modular e-commerce, headless e-commerce to help developers to accelerate their development process. So modular e-commerce, basically, we are not treating e-commerce as a single product. We're treating e-commerce as a set of products, like cart product, catalog product, and so on. So it's much easier for a software house or a developer to create a new module and integrate it with our like set of modules, set of products, or like he can unplug one of our modules and build their module from scratch. And also because we are working with the enterprise, so we don't only have one cart module. we have one cart module for pharmacy e-commerce, for grocery e-commerce, for like fashion e-commerce. So we are very specialized and enabling like to play with our modules in no time. So we have a software house delivered their enterprise e-commerce in 2 weeks.
Amazing. Thanks.
Hi again, Ahmed.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So as I already know much more about SuperCommerce, I think I'm just going to keep my questions concise. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about your traction so far. And you said in 2023 you've already embarked upon the journey in KSA, and you're expecting a $1 million in ARR. You're doing 15,000, per client. So I think it's going to be, a bit lower than 80 clients.
Yeah, exactly.
So how are you planning to really get, to get these clients?
So we already, for our traction, we already achieved before going to Saudi. Okay, let me take a second. Yeah. So before going to Saudi, like I relocated to Saudi 6 months ago. So before going there, our ARR was around 330,000. But once I'm in Saudi and starting like presenting our software to the top enterprises there, like with only 2 partners, we got like 4 more other like enterprises, and like they were extremely happy with the experience we are providing, because like every enterprise is in a hurry to deliver and launch their new e-commerce. So if you are going there promising you will deliver it in 2 weeks, maximum 1 month, for them like it's a lifesaver. So it's easy to migrate all of these e-commerces already. They had an old e-commerce system, but they weren't satisfied about the performance, about the traction, about everything happening with the functionality. So once we went there, we easily convinced them to move to our software. We also, for our business model, we pretty like flexible. So we had some enterprise only working with a revenue share model to convince them to move from their platform without investing much in upfront. So working with the revenue share model as well helps us to accelerate our customer acquisition through only 2 partners.
That sounds good. So just to sum up, perhaps the value proposition. So you're allowing these brands basically to, to optimize their e-commerce journey by adding multiple layers within the e-commerce, and not actually having to contact multiple companies to do, to do the journey.
Exactly.
So, so far you've raised a seed round. When did you raise it exactly?
Last year, early last year.
Early last year.
Yeah. From 500 startup, Flatix Lab, and like a few angel investors.
Okay. And to tap into your unit economics a little bit, perhaps I wouldn't bore you a lot with the numbers, but you said that the customer acquisition was much easier for you. Do you have like any particular number? How much does it cost?
Okay, like during the last 2 years, we only invested less than 50,000 in like sales and marketing, and the rest was more for like development, product development, and product enhancement. Because like building an enterprise product is not easy. So we have like now 20 full-time software engineers in-house. So this is a lot of money coming from salaries and everything. So our main focus not to have like a high sales or high revenue, was more to have a high-tech enterprise software. But likely we got a few customers in the way, and we will be able to reach 460,000 ARR so far.
Perhaps it's too early to say, but how long do you think you would retain one customer?
To obtain?
Retain.
Yeah, so we have a zero churn rate since we started. We started 2.5 years, and we have zero churn rate. So if you are working with the enterprise and you already integrated with their systems and everything, it's extremely hard to move unless you are like giving them an extremely hard time to move. So that's the beauty of working with the enterprise or such a like customer segment.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is time. Give a round of applause to SuperCommerce. Next up, we have another incredible startup who's about to enter the AfricArena stage. We have Roboost.
Hi, everyone. The slides ready?
So Roboost, where are you from?
From Egypt, right here.
From where? From Egypt?
Yeah.
What's the local ecosystem like?
Excuse me?
In one sentence, how do you describe the local ecosystem?
We're the only true fully automated home delivery management solution in the world.
Damn, that's crazy. Ladies and gentlemen, just bear with us for 2 seconds. We had to optimize a couple of slides. Roboost will start in the next 20 seconds. You ready? Do you feel the pressure? How did you feel? How was the first pitch?
No, I feel great.
Feel great, feel great, feel good. Good to go? So just a reminder, we still have 4 incredible founders who are going to be pitching back to back. We have Roboost, Pharmacy Marts, Brando, Almit, and then another startup because I'm not Egyptian. Unfortunately, we had to lose our Egyptian MC because he's moderating the next panel. So I'm just stepping in. Hi, my name is Nathaniel. I'm the program manager and business development lead for AfricArena. But let me not bore you with who I am, and let's actually get a move on and get some Reboost energy.
Sounds good. Okay. Is it ready? Okay. No. No, go back. Go back. Okay.
Test the clicker.
Okay.
Got you.
Works great. Okay. So I'm Omar. I'm CMO at Roboost, and we're reinventing home delivery operations. So to get a better idea of what we're doing, let's have a look at one of our clients, McDonald's Egypt, and see what happened. So before Roboost, they were using a competitor solution, and they faced a lot of issues pre-delivery where operations were run manually with a live ops team, which slowed things down a lot right from the start. And even during delivery, where they had pretty much no oversight over the fleet, which opened things up for manipulation and abuse. And then when all was well and done, when they looked at the data, it looked good on screen, but in reality, they got hundreds of customer complaints about their deliveries, which meant that the data wasn't really reliable. So the problem is that you got this huge team, which is expensive to manage, prone to human error, manipulation, and pretty much close to no pre-delivery optimization. And this even happened over in the US, where they had to cancel hundreds of orders because delivery agents were only choosing orders with tips on them. So this is where Roboost came in, an automated home delivery management solution. We're using AI to optimize and manage every step of the delivery process. So what we did for McDonald's was offer a fully automated delivery cycle. Right from the start, we're integrated with their POS, so we could group and optimize their orders in the best possible way, taking into account things like client priority, the type of order, even agent skills, and then the orders are route optimized and automatically dispatched to the fleet, where they're closely monitored with our AI, so any foul play that might happen is automatically flagged, and their performance is measured with dynamic time for each trip separately. And then we close that loop, so you have a fully automated cycle, no human intervention whatsoever happening here. So we can give them never before seen data about their operation. Things like the actual on-duty time of their delivery agents, or the optimum trip capacity, or how to best allocate their agents across stores. And we can even link that performance that we talked about to their riders' payroll and automate their payroll. We offer also other types of data like the customer heat maps, as well as real-time dashboards as well. And we've done this across several industries. So we've talked about QSRs like McDonald's and Cinnabon, but there's also pharmacies like an Ezebi, Q-commerce clients, as well as 3PLs. And we can categorize them into 3. So there are those who manage their own fleet, and there are those who outsource their fleet, and then there's sort of a mix of both, all of which are subscribed to our tier-based revenue model. So we've seen those who have their in-house fleet like McDonald's, but there's also those who outsource their fleet. So here, a store would request a delivery agent, and automatically a system would dispatch to the best delivery provider available in the area. So we're basically connecting like e-commerce and retails to big delivery providers and vice versa. So those small stores get the advantage of economies of scale of the big delivery providers, while those delivery providers get access to a huge pool of automated orders. So it's a big win-win. So right now we're operating in about 26 cities, including Morocco and Tunisia in North Africa, where we've optimized over 15 million orders, managing over 7,000 delivery agents, and serving over 620,000 unique clients. And this size of the operation has also, is evident in our growth, where we've achieved an annual revenue of $250,000 US last year. It's not working at all. It's okay. Sorry. And with a gross margin of 70%. And our MRR right now is about $41,000 US, with a year-over-year growth of 630%. And we obviously don't plan to stop there. We've already brought on board this year McDonald's Egypt, Deli Fast, which is a huge 3PL over in Saudi Arabia, and Al Azabi, the biggest pharmacy chain here in Egypt. So that puts our ARR at around $750,000 US, but we're targeting 1.2 million ARR by the end of this year. We also plan to expand we're looking at McDonald's Global, AfricArena Group, as well as other 125 accounts by 2025. Some of which are already in the pipeline, like McDonald's MENA, even McDonald's South Africa. We've been in talks with Breadfast Egypt, Nana, and Nahdi in KSA. Moving forward, we plan to expand in Africa and GCC, and then maybe APAC and the US market later down the line. To drive this expansion, we're raising $1.2 million US. And we're confident we have the right team for this because we have the right mix of experience between operation, retail, and technical to understand the market, to understand the problem that our customers are facing, and to go about and reinvent the home delivery operation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give a big round of applause. We're going to do a little bit of fast Q&A from the jury.
Sure. Thanks so much for your presentation. Really impressed with some of your numbers there. Curious question. So there's obviously existing systems that people are using, and obviously you are doing a B2B play. How long is your typical sales cycle for these people, and also actually trying to get them to move from the existing systems that they use?
Okay. So this was pretty. This happened with McDonald's, like I mentioned. Like a quick. I don't know, you deleted my slides afterwards, or? Okay, yeah. So a big differentiator to our competitors is the whole idea of automation. And like with McDonald's, things went pretty fast. We closed the deal in pretty much a month, and we onboarded 150 stores in less than a month afterwards, right away. Like they had, like what the story went, they started testing with one store, and they planned, like they said, like next week we'll bring on board two or three more stores. After the first store, like at night, they called us, we're bringing in 3 more stores tomorrow, and then by the end of the week, they send us this huge Excel sheet with a timeline to deploy all their stores by the end of the month. Compared to what they had with our competitor, they did, it took them about 3 to 4 months to just to test and deploy a couple of stores, and maybe about 6 months to fully deploy. So we can get in there pretty quick, and it's the system. It's pretty simple, but it's very deep. I mean, it's not complicated, but it's very deep. Like the more you ask of it, the more it gives.
Cool, thanks a lot. 2 questions here. Like one is, you mentioned margins of 70%. Would love if you can go through a quick just example of how that works out. I assume it's just working out on because of subscriptions, but
yeah. To break down the margin, I might not be the best person to do it right now. But the idea is that because it's B2B, it's SaaS. Cool. Our margins are pretty low because it's mainly just our development team. It's mainly the cloud storage. It's mainly the servers. It's mainly these sort of things. So we're very asset light, and that's why our expansion later on can be very rapid, can happen very quickly, is because we don't have to, we don't have a physical presence anywhere to go for about that.
Great. Just if you allow another question, like we'd love to understand better what are the key highlights when it comes to the product roadmap. Like what's the main focus, let's say, over the coming year? So
for our product roadmap, there's actually 3 things. We want to become first of all end to end. So we're becoming more rooted into our client's business. So we have modules for the marketing to automate SMS to send to the customers so they can track their orders. We have an HR model so the people in cultural department can look at who their agents that they're hiring and all that, and even we're automating payroll. So we're rooting in, getting into with the finance department. So we're basically getting in there to different departments. So we're becoming a lot more sticky by becoming more end to end in different areas. So that's one part. The second part is we're sort of going into other markets in the middle mile. We're offering other stuff in e-commerce and middle mile to expand in that space as well. And the third thing is becoming future-proofing our solution. Starting to get into the idea of generative AI to help us to build sort of like an in-house data analyst for our customers so we can analyze their data automatically.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Please give him a very big round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Next startup on stage is going to be, please, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Pharmacy Marts. Wait, I'm not gonna let you go right down. Let you go. So, first thing, so how did you know that? You guessed, huh? Okay, so I used to be a pharmacist. In a different life, I used to be a pharmacist. I graduated from the Faculty of Pharmacy, Cairo University, back in the day in 2011. And I remember that me and a couple of friends would take a stab at a similar business. That was very, very early on. And the biggest amount of investment we were capable of amounting at that point in time was £5,000 from my dad, my mom, and a couple of my friends, and the business died at that point in time. But I wish you better luck than that. So I'll leave you now with Pharmacy Marts.
So you already know I'm a pharmacist. So I graduated from Faculty of Pharmacy as well, but year 2009. So I'm 2 years, let's say, older. Actually, I've been in the pharmaceutical field for the last 12, 13 years currently. I worked mainly in the pharmaceutical companies. I worked at 3 of the top 10 pharma companies, Pfizer, Novartis, and Takeda. My last position before starting Pharmacy Marts was head of market access as well as country board member before starting or joining the journey of the startups. So Pharmacy Marts, we are a managed B2B marketplace for pharmaceuticals, mainly the issue that we are solving, which is patients' access to medication. As we speak, 1/4 of the population globally have no access to medications. One of the key reasons for this is the pharmaceuticals supply chain. It is very complex, and yet it is unautomated mostly in the emerging markets. If we took a deeper look at the Egyptian market, there is more than 2,000 suppliers and wholesalers in the market, as well as more than 60,000 pharmacies. Yet the connection between them, it's still very primitive. Mainly you are talking about phone calls to do the procurement of the medications, cosmetics, and medical supplies, as well as the pharmacists need to pay cash on delivery for most of their purchases. Accordingly, there is a financial burden on the pharmacists to operate the business as well. So all of this is held at the burden on the pharmacists between consuming 30% of their daily time on phone calls, reaching out for different suppliers to do the procurement, as well as they need inventory to run the business of around $35,000, yet they need to pay their purchase cash on delivery. And the third part, which is the automation of the processes or the delivery. They deal with multiple suppliers. If you are talking on average 6 to 8 suppliers per day, most of them do the delivery in different timing. Some of them don't deliver. Some of them, in the case of, let's say, the chain pharmacies, deliver to the main hub of the pharmacies. So as Pharmacy Marts, we are here to solve all those problems through a managed B2B marketplace. We have the marketplace, which is connecting suppliers, wholesalers, as well as the manufacturers with the pharmacies, adding value-added services like inventory financing. So we have, or doing the financing with partnerships with banks, as well as doing it on our balance sheet as well. And the third part, which is the delivery service, the pharmacists can order and select the delivery timing, select the delivery address. We have a very flexible delivery service as well. So this is a screenshot of our platform. The pharmacist can search for whatever medication. We do the, let's say, the procurement engine gets him the best offers from multiple suppliers, and then he can add it to the cart, select the payment options, either cash or debit if he have, let's say, credit limit, and then he can select the shipping address, for example, if he have different branches, and then as well select the delivery rounds, as we deliver 3 rounds per day. So as mentioned, we have a very important vertical of our business, which is the financing part. We have partnered with different banks, microfinance, and payment facilitators to create a comprehensive financial railway for this sector, giving the pharmacists access to financing up to $70,000, as well as, the good thing, it is a dedicated balance. So once the pharmacists get this, let's say, financing, it is closed loop on Pharmacy Marts. So our business model, mainly, it is we have different or multiple revenue streams, commission based from the marketplace as well as from the financing. coupled with different value-added services like the delivery service. The base service is for free, but yet the premium is with an extra price. We have value-added services like the insurance redemption, the ERP system, as well as advertising spaces for the manufacturers. Our traction currently, we have been operating actually for 2.5 years. We are covering the key cities at Egypt, Cairo, Giza, Alexandria, as well as part of Delta. We operating currently, or we acquired more than 7,000 pharmacies, which is almost, we are reaching 15% of the total pharmacies at Egypt, as well as achieving a monthly GMV over $600K US, as well as we are talking about the gross, we have been growing year over year, almost 3x. So for our rollout plan, we launched it at Alexandria with a simple, let's say, MVP, our web-based platform. Currently, we launched multiple products, mainly the mobile app, iOS, Android, as well as some internal optimization apps like the sales team app, as well as in our future plans, we are planning to launch an ERP system, creating a complete ecosystem for the pharmacies with the option of automatic refilling as well.
Thank you very, very much.
So the opportunity, mainly we are talking about Egypt, and we are planning to expand further in Africa, but yet after 2 years. So our fund utilization, mainly we raised 1.6 million, and we are raising currently 4 million. So the question.
Thank you very, very much. Big round of applause for Pharmacy Marts. Joy, shall we? Yes.
Okay, it's good. It's good. Hi again. Yeah. So I probably know very much about Pharmacy Marts, but just because I have to ask a question. So, the pharmaceutical sector is one of the most regulated in Africa, and the regulation changes from country to country. So, how are you planning to go through the regulation hurdles? And I understand now one of your business model, you're not going to be really touched by the regulation, but through your scaling, specifically doing the financing and doing more, you must actually be called. And also going to this, when you scale to other countries, how are you planning to go through it?
Okay, so currently, as we speak, for the regulatory report, we have some warehouses which is a middle mile, which is already approved from the Ministry of Health. So this is how we are dealing with the regulatory, let's say, parties, as well as the access to our platform. Only it is dedicated for the B2B. So the issue mainly here with the regulation, if you are targeting the B2C or the customers, yet currently you are targeting the B2B. And for the financing part, as we speak, we are been partnering with different banks and microfinance companies. They have their own licenses. Accordingly, we are not, let's say, getting over the regulations. So this is how we are dealing with it. And for the expansions, of course, there is, let's say, adaptation based on the market and based on the markets that we are seeking for, mainly the African markets. But yet currently there is models like us, so it's already there. So let's say partner with local, let's say, players in order to ensure that we are meeting the regulations.
All right, thank you.
Hi. I'd love to know more about your take rate expansion. I think you showed like an evolution over the years and even projected for next year.
Yeah.
We'd love to know more about this.
So mainly our take rate currently as we speak, or let's start with where it begins. It begins by 4% as take rate. Currently it is 5%. And we are planning by the end of this year to be 7% and the year after to be 9%. So this is how it will be done. Of course, backward integration in the supply chain. We already have deals with for direct sourcing for some of the manufacturers. For the cosmetics, for example, we will be familiar with like Unilever and Johnson & Johnson, L'Oreal. We already have those deals to direct source from them and distribute. So this is one of the actions. The second part, which is the embedded finance. So we started actually from the beginning of the year, the embedded finance as well. So accordingly, we'll do the some of the financing, not all of it, on our balance sheet as well. So this will increase our take rate.
Okay, I have 36 seconds. Just curious about, obviously you are hitting sort of a very large part of the supply chain, so financing and all of that. Are you sort of managing the logistics in-house?
Yes, we are doing the logistics in-house, so it's complete solution, yeah.
Okay, so obviously that comes with a lot of challenges because I think logistics is a whole section on its own. How are you making sure that you're not doing too much and spreading yourself too thin? And obviously, there's a lot of risk that comes with that.
Yes, yeah. So actually, the thing we selected doing the logistics in-house in order to ensure that we have the best user experience. So this is what we have been doing. So the thing that we are operating in different cities, so we already have the know-how of doing this. So we have first mile team, middle mile, as well as last mile team. So it is a complete supply chain.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you so much to the jury. Thank you so much to Pharmacy Marts. It's a pleasure to have you. Okay, we're more than halfway there, so a couple more startups to go, and then we're going to be moving to the last panel before lunch. So we're getting there. We're getting there. Just stick in with me. So for this upcoming startup, please help me welcome on stage a tech-enabled player for the creator economy. When I read that the first time, so I come more from a scientific background, so I didn't really even understand what that means. So I started researching a little bit more. And who's better than the founder of Brando to tell you about it in our upcoming pitch? So please give it up to Brando.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. I can see it's a lot of complicated words, and I want to start step by explaining how these things do work a little bit. Let's start with the manufacturing side. Over the past years, the manufacturing has been, big brands going to countries like India, Bangladesh, Egypt, going to large factories, trying to get the best cost from those factories, leaving the SME manufacturers, which is Egypt has a lot of them, over 3,000 manufacturers, working on local demand that is very inconsistent. Now, looking at the last 10 years, on the social side, social commerce or creator economy has been growing extremely, extremely fast. Who are those? Are people sitting on TikTok and Instagram, along with the small brands. Now, those guys have a very different demand than large brands. They want small MOQs. They don't mind paying a little bit higher price, but they get whatever they want extremely also fast. So what we did is basically we went to create a new market, going to those guys as the creators and telling them, do you want to start your brand for free? And going to those guys, do you want to have a consistent weekly volume from creators all over the world? So that's basically what we do, but there's a lot of details underneath that. So looking into connecting these two, the supply chain of fashion is very complex, right? So you have the design process is difficult, and small manufacturers will not going to be able to design whatever the creator wants or dream of. Now, and also there is difficulty to find the reliable small manufacturers and matching them with the right creator. Last but not least, sourcing and material infrastructure is very important. So we did a solution that composes of three main modules. So first of all is a design marketplace, and the main objective of the design marketplace is to connect the manufacturer as well as the creator to the right designers to create the design for them. The second part would be a very asset-light approach of manufacturing using pre-order methods for the creators so they can launch their products without any stock in advance. Last but not least is very powerful integration and distribution for the social commerce, for the creators, for them to sell through third-party marketplaces, as well as creating stores for them for free. So a very simple example on how we connect the creators with fashion designers. The creator would self-onboard. We would basically crowdsource a lot of creators. Fiverr, how those things work. There's a lot of pattern makers there, but the creators doesn't know that. So they come to our system, they sign up, they post their inspiration, automatically it would go to the designer submits the pattern, and then here's the design is almost ready. Next step, now the design is ready, the creator starts launching their product and promoting their product, and then these orders starts coming in, and then automatically a manufacturer would be assigned for that style that the creator has launched. And this cycle, we were able to reduce it to 14 days because basically all the sourcing and material supplier is also exposed in our system. So currently we have one hub here in Egypt that serves Egypt GCC, and we're looking to expand to US and the UK, and then we're going to have another hub in India, and we're considering another hub also in Nigeria. So from a distribution standpoint, the distribution is quite simple. Every creator that signs up have a store in Brando. And then when they launch their products, they automatically can integrate to their Shopify or Magento standard websites, or they can do integration on Instagram Shop, or they integrate to a third party such as Amazon or Jumia. So technically, the value chain connects more than one dot. It's a more vertical supply chain that connects the manufacturers, suppliers, designers, and creators. Obviously, I can do a lot of product demo, but the idea is just to get you excited, right? So this is basically what we connect all together under a single technology infrastructure. We've built our own systems from scratch, so all these things are connected. How we make money is pretty simple. On any design process, we take 20%. And any manufacturing process, we take up to 40% a spread between the creator price as well as the manufacturer price. We just add anywhere between 20 to 40%. So, how are we doing? On an end customer, we have our CAC at 3.8, CPO of 1.5. Average end customer value is around $28. Gross margins, which is PC1, is 48%. Our ROAS in 2023 is around 12x. And Instagram, yeah, that's irrelevant. And sales from returning customers around 40% month over month.
Thank you very, very much. So pick up one of your upcoming slides, and wrap it up.
All right. So how are we expanding here? We just signed a deal with the National Bank of Egypt to develop all the SME manufacturers here in Egypt with our capabilities. We signed an MOU with Jumia for Africa distribution for all the creator products. And we're open up for global deliveries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Give it up. Now we're going to move to the jury for a couple of questions.
Sure, thanks so much for that. Very interesting solution you have there. My question is just in terms of sort of maintaining quality control. How do you ensure that you're onboarding people who are going to actually produce something of quality? Is that something that you have to worry about?
I think the business, the Achilles heel of the business is quality and lead time, right? And you need to be working with a lot of those manufacturers for lead time. So one of the things that we've been doing now is obviously, you're a fashion company that doesn't have fashion designer, that you don't have production, you don't have production houses, so all these is just connecting. But what you have is people supervising operations and quality. That's where your business is, more or less. This is what we do invest every day on.
So is that like an actual physical team of people who are working on this?
All the factories that are there,
yeah.
We have counted. This is the biggest OpEx cost that we have, is basically, along with the development, is basically ensuring that those people are doing their job. Are those small SMEs are actually producing the quality? Because eventually if the manufacturer is sending out to the creator or sending out to end customer right away without us saying, hey, what's happening, it's in your face after all. They say, hey, I went through Brando, I created a product, and then the product was shit, so it's us.
Cool. Thanks, Alex, for this. Just a question on marketplace dynamics. I may have missed this, but just trying to understand. Again, they got matched to, let's say, a proper provider. Is there any leakage, let's say, in future type of orders? How do you maintain this, and how do you ensure it's not happening?
All right. So let's put it this way. Any transaction, there is a lot. This cycle have, let's say, around 4 transactions happening. So our main objective is to make sure that these things are happening. So for example, one of the things that you're doing is you're connecting the suppliers to the manufacturers, because in every order the SME has to do, you have to say, use the system bill of material to go buy the bill of material from that supplier, right? So you're trying to really build a roadmap for those people to build a full supply chain over there. Sure, there are some leakages that do happen, and our job is to really kick out whoever is good, keep whoever was good. It's similar as marketplace operations. None of the marketplace is fully, you have cancellation rates and you have all these things. It's part of our managing the job.
Cool, thanks.
All right, so perhaps I'm missing something, but can you expand on who's your main customer is, who's paying for the service?
So it's a B2B2C, so we have 2 ways. So we collect the money on behalf of the creator, that's one. And sometimes the creator would be paying for, so the design services, the creators do pay. For the end customer services, the user do pay, and we collect it on behalf of the creator.
You collect it on behalf of the creator. Do I have time?
Yes.
Yes. So do we have can you expand a little bit on the market? How big really do you think that the market is?
40 million creator worldwide. And if you look at the fashion market generally, I mean, what we are is like, if you look at Shein, everybody knows Shein more or less,
Yeah.
right? Shein is a brand. And the way we said of it, we're not going to tackle Shein by being Shein, right? We want to tackle Shein by being, a different solution for creators. Because Shein started when brands, online brands are a thing. Now we're going to start with the creators is a thing, and the creator economy is a thing. And this is how we basically indirectly competing with a huge assortment and relying on the distribution of the creators and third-party distribution. That's basically our strategy, more or less.
Thank you very much. Please give it up for Brando. You stole my clicker. You stole my clicker. This clicker is going around like it's mad. Everyone wants to have a piece of the clicker. Okay, so two startups to go. Next up, please help me welcome on stage the founder of Almit. You didn't give it up to him. What's happening? You're getting sleepy or what? Okay, so before I let you go now with the clicker, I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes, sure.
How many startups approach you for legal advice?
So many.
A lot.
Yeah, so many.
But do you think that if you would categorize one thing from your perspective that's the biggest issue that startups face from a legal perspective, what would it be?
Agreement between the founders and the key players of the company.
That's a tough one. Thank you very much. So I'm going to leave you now with the founder of Almit to tell you more about what they're building in legal tech.
Hello everyone, this is Adham, and before telling you what we do, I prefer to describe a little bit the legal industry. I'm going to talk today about the legal industry. And I'm going to talk more in specific about the lawyer's job. One of the biggest problems of the legal industry in general is that there is so many services out there. It's not just 1 or 10 or even 100. It might count till thousands of services, of different small services. This is from one side. From the other side, it's really hard. Lawyers, they deeply understand the technical part of the law, which is the legal stuff. However, they have very minimal knowledge about technology and the online presence and how to present themselves online. That's why here we do what we do. So in one phrase, we connect you with a qualified lawyer in less than 24 hours. For a client, if you need a lawyer assistance, it's really hard to find a specialized lawyer and a qualified lawyer. For example, talking about the Egyptian market, we have 600,000 lawyers. However, how can you assess that this lawyer is qualified for your specific needs? It's really hard. And how can you assess the lawyer is already qualified to represent you in front of the courts? It's hard as well. From the lawyer's sides, it's really hard to attract new clients. Our solution is a platform where we onboard the qualified lawyers from one side and we help them have their virtual office. From the other side, we help you as a client reach a good lawyer and a qualified lawyer and a specialized lawyer for your specific legal needs. How do we monetize this? From the client side, we take 30% commission on every single transaction. From the lawyer's side, they pay an annual subscription because they have a dashboard. They can better manage all the transactions. Imagine that you're a lawyer and you have more than 50 clients. It becomes a hassle to manage all these clients. We provide them with a dashboard to help them. It's a practice management solution. And that's why they are paying us $1,500 as a yearly subscription. And we expect by having this model to generate $15 million by 2025. Now, you as a client, how will you use Almit? The first thing, you will find a lawyer and you will choose your specific legal needs. You will select the service, you will pay, and at the end of the service, you're going to rate the service that you got. Having this lawyer, it allowed us to offer more than 2,000 legal services on our platform. Now, some of you might feel that it's really hard to scale and expand geographically with these amount of legal services. So, in order to expand to a new geographical area, the first thing, our R&D team do a research to understand what are the trends and the legal trends in this specific geography. The second thing is that we onboard qualified lawyers that provide and offer this service. The third step, we do our outreach activities, and the last step, we have our legal compliance team. Whenever there is a problem between the client and the lawyer, we are there. Talking about the market size, the market is extremely huge, with 60 million transactions in Egypt and Saudi Arabia. And the average lawyer's fees per transaction is $320, which give us a total addressable market of $18.2 billion. Huge. Now, what are the traction that we've reached till now? We've been able to deliver more than 18,000 consultations, more than 2,000 legal transactions. We've been able to generate $420,000 with a GTV of a financial flow coming on our website of $1.4 million. And we have a very good executive team that has all the main pillars to run that business, from the legal, from the technology, and from the executional or the executive parts. Thank you.
Wow, that was on point. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very, very good job.
Thanks
Julie?
so much. Very curious about your go-to-market strategy. I can imagine sort of getting a lawyer, you get one when there's something happening, so it must be a trust thing that has to be built. So how do you also kind of
Can I
get
ask you
over
a
that
question?
hurdle?
Where are you from?
Me,
Yeah.
originated from Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe. Okay,
Yes.
let's consider. I want to go to Zimbabwe. The first thing that I'm going to do is to understand the market and the legal trends. Okay. After understanding this, I'll start to assessing the lawyers who provide that service. I'll start to provide to assess the standards of the service delivery. Then I will start to onboard a number of qualified lawyers that would provide that service with a high quality, with a good standard. Okay. Then I will start to run all my outreach activities to reach you and other clients. So that's my go-to-market strategy.
So you are actively identifying potential lawyers, and you have to speak to them. How do you scale that?
We have a team that's specialized to do that.
Okay, but how do you scale that very quickly? Because that obviously the overheads become very high if you are sort of going.
Okay, so it's much easier. I have a team who specializes in this part, but it's much easier to have a team who specializes in this to scale that part instead of just finding qualified lawyers. If I'm the direct provider, it becomes so hard to just onboard lawyers to the company. However, doing this with the method that I just described, it becomes so easy to scale.
Cool. Thanks a lot for presentation. Would love to understand better the split between SMEs and personal cases that you've been seeing to date. And plus, you mentioned like an expansion, you've been in Saudi. When did this happen, and how much does this contribute to the overall business also today?
Okay. So the first thing that on our platform, whether you're a company leader or a corporate leader, or you're coming to me as an individual, you will find your legal need on the website. That's the good thing, okay? Now, talking about the split between both, I might say that 75% are individuals using the website and 25% SMEs and corporations. However, they are coming to me, till now, they are coming to me as individuals. Okay, so for example, they need a specific service in the, let's say, in the authority of investment, in different parts, they come to me as individuals. Now, talking about the split between Egypt and Saudi, I might say, early this year, we decided that the majority of our operations will be done in Saudi Arabia. So right now, we have 40% of our revenue coming from Saudi Arabia.
Cool, thanks.
And we did this, by the way, for financial reasons. you know, the ROI per transaction in Saudi is a little bit higher.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Give him a big round of applause. Thank you. Great solution there. Last but not least, we're almost there. Last but not least, for the upcoming startup pitch, please help me welcome on stage the founder of Istishara. The founder of Istishara? The founder of Istishara. He's not here. Cairo time. Very good. So that buys me back another 10 minutes to move on to the next panel, which we're going to start setting up right now. So please move on to the upcoming panel. So until they set up the panel, can we please invite our panelists from outside? So going back to the part where I tell stories and ask you questions and doing stuff like that. How many of you would say that you are currently working in a market that you're not originally from? How many of you are working in markets that you're not originally from? Like, for example, an Egyptian working in Austria, or a South African working in North Africa, etc. Yeah? That's only 3 people. Everyone's a local here, so you're all Egyptians. Okay, no, I'm just joking. So I think that's something that that comes a lot to mind when we're talking about, or when I'm introducing this next panel. Today we're going to talk about the local reality of specific markets. Yeah, and in this case we're going to start talking a little bit more and expanding on the Egyptian entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I recall that around 3 years ago I was making my move back to Egypt. Actually, so I was living abroad. Me and my co-founders actually met in Dublin, Ireland, working at that point in time for LinkedIn, and we consciously made the decision to move back to Egypt and build here. And that decision came from a place, or rooted from a place, of seeing a lot of opportunity in this market here in Egypt and the greater African region at large. And in order to help me talk and expand a little bit more on that topic, I'm going to be introducing to you the next panel, which is necessarily going to be talking about, can we get the slides for the panel? It's going to be talking about the Egyptian ecosystem and the Cairo ecosystem, how vibrant it is, and necessarily initiatives that are happening within that ecosystem to kind of nurture it. So please help me welcome on stage Lamia Rashidi, Incubation Department Manager at TEEK. Please give her a round of applause. Followed by Nadia Tawil, Investment Officer at African Invest Group. Another round of applause. Kind of like we're going to keep doing rounds of applause to get like warmed up because you seem a little bit sleepy. Then, dear friend Rafa Saleh, from founding partner at Qubit Ventures. Rafa, who I think is very possible having a cup of coffee outside, but we can call him. Rafa, he's going to be around the corner. Yeah, I saw him having coffee. Probably he's having coffee with the next person, which is also Diego Arias, Associate Africa Venture at Plug and Play, which are both my friends, both having a cup of coffee outside together, and I hope they come and join us at any point in time. And just as the last minute, I was not even supposed to moderate this panel. They just told me like 5 minutes ago. They were like, yeah, the moderator's not coming, so how about you moderate the panel? So I'm also going to moderate the panel. So that's going to happen right now. So I'm introducing myself, Abdurrahman Ayman, the co-founder of Educately and the moderator of this panel. Thank you very much. I hope Diego and Rafa make it on time for the panel before I end it up. Yes, gentlemen, thank you very, very much for the punctuality. I appreciate it. I'm joking. Thank you. Diego, no, you can be slower.
لازم نقعد.
You can sit in any order, so it's okay.
وانت هتبص ورا.
Okay, so the only thing standing between all of you on lunch is these panelists, so try not to give them hate. And when we open the Q&As, it's basically going to be up to you completely how long this panel takes. I'm very, very pleased to be with this beautiful bunch of people. Most of you have known each other for a long time or know each other from different parts of this ecosystem. And that's what we're here to talk about today. The vibrant ecosystem that's currently ramping up in Cairo and Egypt at large. And in order for me to start dissecting deeper into that, I'm going to start with you and telling me a little bit more about what you do, who you are, and telling that to the audience, and then we're going to move on from there to a deeper dive on what TEEK and Etida do.
Okay. Thank you, Abdulrahman. Good morning, everyone. I'm Lamia Rashidi. I'm Incubation Department Manager at TIC, Technology Innovation Entrepreneurship Center.
What does TIC do?
Which is part of ITIDA, Information Technology Industry Development Agency. TIC and ITIDA are affiliated to the MCIT, and they promote the ICT. Their aim is to promote the ICT sector. TIC is more focusing on startups and innovation, on entrepreneurship. ITIDA, which is a bigger umbrella, is also supporting SMEs in the ICT sector, and this is through different programs.
Beautiful. So we're having kind of like a little bit of a government perspective also on government entities on ecosystem building in Egypt. And at this point in time, I see that as a very big part of the government's direction. And let's expand a little bit more on that, on the type of initiatives that TIC and ITIDA have at this point in time, when it even comes to partnerships with some different type of stakeholders, like one that we have here on stage, whether it be Plug and Play, 500 Global, and attracting such names to come to Egypt and contribute to ecosystem building. So let's expand a little bit more on that.
Okay, great. Actually, partnering, as you have mentioned, partnering with 500 Global and Plug and Play is part of the new strategy of the ITIDA, which was recently developed with Deloitte Consultancy. And when it was developed, we had also as a partner the USAID. This strategy focused on 4 main pillars in order to attract foreign investment to local startups. And one of these pillars was the access to finance. And under the access to finance, we had the initiatives the need to sponsor the opportunity for international accelerators and early stage VC to come and set up operation in Egypt. And that's why we partnered with Plug and Play Egypt and 500 Global. But again, this partnership is bigger, is under a bigger umbrella, which is Creativa Hubs. So we have, for example, Plug and Play. They are hosted in Creativa Cairo.
Beautiful space.
Yes, it's known as Creativa Sultan Hussein. And we have 500 Global hosted in Creativa Giza in Beni Sarat area. But these are not the only 2 Creativa. We actually have, the plan is to have around 30 Creativa all over Egypt. Currently we have 8 Creativa up and running in different governorates, and the plan is for others to be recently launched. 5 will be recently launched, and the other will come later at the different stages. And in all these Creativa Hubs, we partner with the private sector, whether internationally, like the 2 we mentioned, or with local private sectors in different governorates. We believe in our role as a catalyst, not that the government will do everything by itself, but in order to collaborate with the private sector and with the different player in the ecosystem.
That's beautiful. That's great to hear. And I'm going to use that as a segue into one of the collaborators, which is Plug and Play. So Plug and Play came to Egypt, early stage. What's the mandate? Tell me a little bit more about it. You can also introduce yourself in the beginning.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Diego. I'm with the investment team at Plug and Play. For those of you that don't know Plug and Play, we do a number of things. So we get to wear many hats, which is great. We work with corporations and governments. In the case of Egypt, we're fortunate enough to work with ITIDA, USAID, National Bank of Egypt, and the Egypt Post to focus on developing the ecosystem and catalyzing investment, working with early and growth stage entrepreneurs. We're also an early stage VC, so we do pre-seed, seed, and Series A sometimes. And then we also do corporate consulting. So we get to do a number of things. And we have a regional footprint. We're based out of Cairo. Our office, as we said, is in Masr Gadida in Heliopolis. You're all more than welcome to visit. It's a nice palace from 1910. So
I recommend it.
Palace. And then we also have offices in Morocco, South Africa, Saudi, UAE, and another 40-something offices around the world.
Beautiful. I'll use that as a segue then, Diego, to start expanding a little bit more. How long have you been here in Cairo?
So that's a good question. So Plug and Play has been investing in Egypt, I think, for a little over 5 years.
5 years.
But with physical footprint, we opened our offices last year.
Okay.
So when we kicked off the partnership with ITIDA and USAID, National Bank of Egypt and Egypt Post. But before that, we had been investing in companies like Bosta, NowPay or Links, BokTok, Bypass.
Good picks.
Yeah, good picks, thankfully. And we're very excited to have been able to partner with great entrepreneurs even before having a physical footprint. And then we are able to, by opening the office, expand the services that we can offer to the startups we partner with.
Very nice. You're saying 5 years, yeah, you've been investing in this ecosystem. How have you seen the evolution of the ecosystem over the past 5 years? If you would put it in like 3 key bullet points.
Yeah, so for example, I think some of the first investments, we did them from the Abu Dhabi office when I was based there. And we've seen tremendous growth, and it's been really exciting to see much more capital flowing, lots of second-time entrepreneurs. I think we've seen a great evolution where 5 years ago, many of the first-time entrepreneurs were coming out of corporates and starting their own business, spinning out of the innovation lab of telco companies, and now we're seeing a lot of first and second-time entrepreneurs coming out of some of those success stories of the last few years, be it Swivel or Maxab or any of the companies that have raised significant amounts.
Later stage.
Yeah, or Kareem, and those companies that have evolved and grown from seed or pre-seed 5 or 6 years ago to where they are today, and people coming out there and starting their businesses. So it's been a really rewarding experience to be a part of the ecosystem for so long.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Diego. And I'm going to use that to build upon it. So you're doing seed, pre-seed, that type of range, but we had some bigger hitters. We have some bigger hitters with us today on the panel. So I'll let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about the mandate of AfricInvest, and then we'll take it from there. You're going to see it's going to happen in our conversation. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to put you on the spot.
So obviously AfricInvest has historically been a private equity firm, and obviously with everything that's going on in the world, we decided to venture into the VC world, and we actually closed our first fund with Cathay in July 2022. It's a 110 million euro fund. Since launch,
a small one.
Tiny. Since launch, we've invested in around 10 companies. We're finalizing for our 11th. We're Africa focused, and we want to start investing in Egypt. We just haven't had the opportunity to do so yet. Traditionally speaking, we invest in Series A to B rounds. But we do have one of our portfolio companies that's actually expanding into Egypt right now. So we are trying to find synergies between the companies in our portfolios and up-and-coming opportunities in the Egyptian market as well.
That's very cool. So with your vast experience across Africa, what would you say are the biggest markets from your perspective when it comes to VC investment?
I feel like I answered this question.
Kind of like a little bit.
No, obviously, I think Egypt is obviously one of the biggest markets, and it can't be ignored. And I know we had discussed Nigeria and South Africa and Kenya as well. But I think
those are
there's
kind of like
so
the big
much,
four.
the big four, but there's so much talent in Egypt, and the market is still underdeveloped. So I feel like it still hasn't taken the weight it should. Although I know that Egyptian startups have gotten a lot more funding in recent years. So I think this is a great time to be in Egypt.
No, that's good to hear. It's a little bit counter to a lot of the narrative that we hear, like Egypt, I'm not really investing.
The Egypt story, or you don't?
Yes. So you buy the Egypt story. That's really good to hear. I'm going to use that to move on to my last but not least panelists of the day today. So Rafa, tell us a bit more about the mandate of Qubit, like what are you guys building, etc. How do you find yourself in between those two type of mandates that are on the left side there?
Sure, thank you. So Qubit Ventures, we're a microfund. It's a $20 million target fund. We're North Africa focused, and by North Africa, it is mainly Egypt, Morocco, and Tunisia. We invest in seed to pre-series A, so this is like more of our sweet spot. We're sector agnostic, so it's more about the business model. And basically, we're part of a family of funds. So we're 3 partners. One of my co-founders is already co-created 7 other funds now across the world, and we work collectively together. And we help basically our portfolio companies tap into this network of global funds. So this is our mandate. We've invested already in 4 companies. We're closing another 2 deals as we speak, and proceeding forward. All the companies we invested in so far in Egypt, but now we're looking heavily into Morocco and Tunisia as well.
Beautiful. Let's play a little bit of ping pong together over here. From your perspective, what's next for the Egyptian ecosystem? Like, But before answering what's next, we need to look at like what are the challenges that are currently facing us to be able to take the next step. So what are the biggest challenges that face this ecosystem from your perspective?
So you're picking on me to bring the bad news, huh?
I'm picking on you to bring the bad news because we're friends, so I can do that.
Cool. Right. I think one thing, and I know Etida is putting a lot of effort into that, is the enabling environment. So back to the strategy that Lamia was mentioning, it's built around 4 pillars. And those 4 pillars are enabling environment, access to finance or access to capital, access to markets, and access to talent. In terms of access to talent, we're in a relatively very, very good position with a quality of tech talent coming out of the Egyptian education system across several governorates. In terms of access to markets, this is an area that needs a lot of support from the ecosystem support entities, whether that be accelerators, investors, organizations like Etida, because the challenge of operating across different markets and market entry is always very, very hard. In terms of access to capital, of course, there's a shortage of capital across the whole world. No one can deny that. Having said that, if you're a really good startup, you will get your funding. So the question is, do you have a real product market fit? Is this a fantastic team? Is this, is the potential good enough? And if basically you fit all the criteria, you will get your funding. So I would put the least actually emphasis on access to capital. Maybe access to capital is harder for fund managers rather than for startups because of the denominator effect. But that's not a big issue for access to funding.
Beautiful. So if we springboard from that into, from your perspective, what is the next step for this ecosystem? And I'm going to go around with that, so you all have a moment to think there of, from your perspective, what would you say is the next step for the Egyptian or the Cairo ecosystem to start becoming more vibrant and takes bigger leaps or bigger steps in this upcoming year?
Yeah, sure. Now, of course, for us as Qubit Ventures, from day one, our mandate was to invest in companies that are either already working across or serving several markets, or have very clear potential to do that very quickly. Having said that, what happened with the devaluation of the Egyptian pound further validated our thesis, but now that has become, in my opinion, a very important factor for all startups in Egypt. And across Africa as well, because the devaluation risk is always there, and you need to have you need to hedge your revenue stream from basically different markets and different currencies. So this is one thing that I see a lot of Egyptian founders now putting a lot of emphasis on and striving towards, and putting the legwork to do that. The other thing is, like Diego was mentioning, we're seeing second round founders. The maturity of founders is improving, and it's still, I think that trend will continue for a while. So now we're seeing more, the average age is a bit higher, but it's not about the age, it's about the more experienced founders. So we're seeing more like experienced founders coming out of a certain industry who know the industry very well and are basically disrupting the industry where they came from, and they have not only the know-how about the industry, but the network for that particular business, which is always a very important factor for the growth of the company. So that is trying to look at the silver lining for everything that's happening.
Well, that's the only thing we can do at such times, and I'm gonna move on to you, Lamia, with the exact same question from your perspective, and looking at Etida and Teak. What are your plans for this upcoming year to continue supporting the Egyptian ecosystem?
Actually, I totally agree with what Rafa has just said. Adding to that, we believe very much in the importance of the talent, because the talent is the key ingredient to the Egyptian ecosystem and Egyptian startups. Also, the collaboration between the different players in the ecosystem. Like, I think we need to have more synergy between the many government entities are working on promoting the ecosystem, many private sector, many organizations. I think we will need to have more synergy, better synergy between the different players, and maybe also better enabling environment, legislation and stuff like that. I see that some people are working on improving not only ITIDA, but also like the Ministry of Investment and Hossein Heba, for example. Like several people are working on this enabling environment element. So I believe if we work on these two, we will get better
Beautiful,
ecosystem.
beautiful. Echoing to you, Diego, what would it take? No, I'm not going to ask you the same question. What would it take for Plug and Play in this next year to double the amount of deals that it did last year?
So I think that's a good question. I think one of the things that I would say has been kind of the silver lining in this situation, and building off what everyone has said, is seeing founders diversify. And I think seeing that diversification in terms of revenue streams, and obviously all startups have talked about Saudi, right? Saudi has had a great gravitational pool, and also a great pool of money. So I think it's an attractive market, but I think this situation has also allowed entrepreneurs to look at expanding to other markets, and that's where funds that are based in Tunisia, funds that are based in Morocco, funds with a regional footprint are also playing a big role in helping entrepreneurs chart a clear path from saying, okay, we're doing our pre-seed in Egypt, we're building this product, we're finding product market fit, or validating this, and then we're racing a bigger round to expand to one or two markets, and seeing that kind of like diversification in terms of revenue streams and currencies. I think that's one of the things that that we have seen as a consistent, let's say, feature across the companies we've been investing in, and it's something that we're looking to see more of. A clear chart in validating here and expanding to other markets, and sort of, ultimately one of the things that I think we prefer as a fund, because we partner with corporations, is also seeing more B2B plays, but also B2B has a different, obviously D2C is very difficult, but B2B has different challenges, be it longer sales cycles. Also, you're tied to much larger contracts, so much higher CapEx or OpEx. And then, so there are certain challenges, but I think one of the things that is a great opportunity, and one of the things I would like to see, is not just diversifying in terms of markets, but also when working with a partner, partnering with corporations that already have a footprint in other markets, so you can piggyback on them to expand to more markets and deepen lifetime value.
Beautiful pointer. And I'm going to wrap up with Nadia. What would it take for Africa Invest to have your first investment in Egypt?
No, I think everything Diego is saying is right on point in the sense that scalability is key. And Africa Invest as a group, we've invested in over 11 countries. We have experiences around, we're sector agnostic in all the different sectors. So we definitely look for businesses that have the scalability factor. And then we can come in with our know-how, with our network, because I think a lot of maybe first-time founders make the mistake that you think you can like copy-paste your idea into another market. You oversimplify the process, and I think we're fortunate enough to have experience in so many different markets that we're able to like plug in that founder with the local team to understand the local market and actually do your studies correctly in order to expand. It just comes to the original concept, whether it's scalable or not, kind of thing.
Beautiful. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to open the floor now for a couple of Q&As before I let you go to lunch. So any questions from the crowd to our panelists? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Brian from Novista Ventures. This question I'm sure you hear all the time, but what are you excited about? Which sectors or spaces are you excited about in Egypt right now?
Who starts?
You make your pick.
Okay, we're excited about several sectors. For example, the logistics sector is exciting for us because it's a very fragmented market. And for international corporate to come into that market, someone has to do the first layer of defragmentation for that corporate to be able to operate in Egypt. So we're excited about the companies that are basically doing this level of defragmentation of the logistics market in Egypt. If you look at Egypt on the macro level, our education system needs improvement, our health system needs improvement. So naturally, companies that are solving acute pain in those two sectors are very attractive to us as well. And fintech, of course, fintech. I mean, everything is financial enablement is becoming part of the mandate of the country. So fintech is a very interesting sector as well.
Very, very cool. Any further questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for example, we have co-invested in companies that are sort of in that kind of niche in terms of logistic plays with embedded fintech. Logistic plays with embedded fintech. I don't know if there's a bit of echo. I guess you can hear me.
You can use Rafa's microphone. He can share.
Thank you. So yeah, logistics with embedded fintech, that's something that we really enjoy. The opportunity to sort of digitize a traditional industry and layer an additional thing, especially in the marketplace segment. We like marketplaces that can offer opportunities for credit scoring and opportunities for lending. Consumer lending is a bit challenging. I think we've seen like that in Europe you can Klarna, your Uber Eats. I don't think buy now, pay later nuggets is necessarily kind of the best financial development, but I do think microfinance is something super important. So anything in alternative credit scoring, allowing consumers to build different sources of data, empowering people to use their homes as collateral, to take loans, anything that sort of broadens the scope of financial inclusion is something that we're deeply passionate about. And also access to healthcare is something we love. So those are kind of, I would say, the highlights. Of course, everyone talks about fintech, healthcare, and logistics. It might be redundant, but those are the opportunities that we're really excited about.
Very cool. Very, very cool. One last question.
Cool. I just have a question. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
I just have a question around valuation expectations in this market versus in sub-Saharan Africa. So if any of you have some investments in sub-Saharan Africa in here, what should investors looking to invest in Egypt particularly anticipate in terms of average ranges? I know it's obviously sector specific and there's a lot of nuances, but as you fare it against some of the other geographies, and then also maybe interestingly against Tunisia and Morocco as well.
That's spicy.
So I can open, for example, there's a company or there's similar business models that we've looked at, let's say, in, just to give a broad range, Ivory Coast and Cameroon, Egypt, and then Nigeria and Kenya. I think Egypt tends to be a bit more expensive compared to the traction that we see in other markets. So if you want to think about bang for your buck in terms of traction and what you're investing in, I think Egypt sometimes tends to be a bit more expensive. Also because a lot of the founders come, again, or they were coming from these corporates with high salaries, very comfortable lives. So to pay yourself a nice salary and live in a nice neighborhood, it commands a certain round size.
Like where you live.
Yeah. I wish. We're working on it. No, but I think that segues into kind of the round size and the valuation. So I think, again, one of the things that has shifted is that the valuation has also made those things a bit different. So I think probably we're going to be able to see like smaller rounds with a bit lower valuations right now. And you can give the perspective of Egypt and the region. I think Morocco, what we have seen in Morocco is there's not that much activity. As much as we love Morocco and we've been there for years, it's a market where we saw about 30 million of VC investment last year compared to like 650, 700 million in Egypt. So it's, miles apart. I still think Morocco is a great market to be in. I think Morocco is a market similar to Egypt 5 years ago. So I think if you're early, you can be a winner. And I think it's a really exciting place. But I think also valuations in Morocco are significantly lower than in Egypt.
You didn't tell her the ranges, though. She asked for that. She asked for the ranges. You didn't give her the money for her buck.
Yeah. So for the ranges, I mean, everyone please jump in. But I think we're seeing pre-seeds in the 3 to 6 million range. Seed 7 to 12, up to 15. Of course, there's outliers, right? People that come out of pre-seed with 20, 30 million and an MVP and a much higher valuation and a much higher dilution. But in general, we're seeing something like 3 to 6, 7 to 12 or 15, and then 15 to 25. And then, of course, then it jumps. I think that's what we have been seeing.
Do you all concur? Rafa, you concur?
Yes, to a large extent. I think this is more or less the range. Maybe on the valuation levels of Egypt, there has been, the drop has already happened, and we're seeing a lot of discounted valuations. A flat round is a success. A down round is very much acceptable today for a lot of companies, as long as they know what they're doing. They're taking this new round and expanding the business. If we're comparing Egypt to Morocco and Tunisia, I cannot talk about the sub-Saharan Africa because this is not our area of expertise. But in terms of North Africa, they're very, very different markets. It's not just the valuations factor. So Egypt is a big market in itself, over 100 million population. It's a good ground for building your MVP. It's also a good ground for testing that MVP and then taking it to other markets. Now, if we take on the other end of the spectrum is Tunisia. It's a very, very small market. So Tunisian startups have no option but to go global from day one. So the model itself has to be very, very light. A typical SaaS model would work well. Tunisians are very tech heavy. That's what we're seeing as well. So that adds. Morocco is a bit different because just like Diego was saying, it's quite similar to Egypt a few years back. The companies we're looking at in Morocco, most of them are the first mover in whatever they're doing in Morocco, but they're also targeting France because of the French-Moroccan connection and the Tunisian-French connection as well. So they're very, very different markets.
Very, very cool. So please help me give a round of applause for our panelists for the day today. And I will let you now go for lunch, which will be going until 1:30, so until 1:30. 10 past 1, not 1:30, 10 minutes past 1. So you got a little bit, 30 minutes of a break, have a little bit of lunch and networking. And for entrepreneurs that are interested, Briga is going to be hosting a deep dive with Aya over lunch. You go find her. She's not currently in the room, but I can also introduce her to find her in the lunch area. Briga is looking for pre-seed and seed stage startups for early stage investments at this point in time. Thank you very much, and we'll reconvene at 10 minutes past 1. Thank you.
Thank you.